The first light of dawn brushed across the horizon as Kai Yong stirred awake. After washing up, he picked up the worn broom leaning in the corner and stepped outside. At the doorway, he stretched, gazing at the faint gray sky before taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. For a brief moment, he allowed himself peace, then began sweeping the courtyard, clearing away the dust and fallen leaves. He wore plain black clothes, old but neat. Somehow, their faded color made his loneliness even more visible. Despite years of isolation, Kai Yang's back remained straight, his expression calm and focused. His movements were steady and practiced. With a simple twist of a wrist, the broom glided across the ground, gathering debris as though drawn by some invisible force. Kai Yang was an experimental disciple of the Sky Tower School. He had trained there for 3 years, but had only reached the tempered body third stage. Others who joined alongside him had already advanced further, earning the right to enter the inner courts and become true disciples. Kai Yang, however, was left behind, sweeping the floors of the outer court. 3 years to reach the third stage wasn't bad, but it wasn't impressive either. It was mediocrity defined. Still, he endured. Each day, he worked to support himself, splitting his time between menial labor and cultivation. The Sky Tower School was infamous across the Han Dynasty, not for its size, but for its brutal philosophy. Here, strength ruled everything. The strong were kings, the weak were discarded. Bonds between disciples were shallow, alliances born from convenience, only to be broken when power shifted. Under this ruthless system, Sky Tower had earned its terrifying reputation. Its disciples, though few, were feared across the rivers and lakes. For every new disciple, the first 3 years were a test. Food, shelter, and clothing were provided by the outer court so they could focus solely on cultivation. But if they failed to break through the tempered body stage within those 3 years, they were either expelled or demoted to experimental disciples. Kai Yang had become one of them, the school's shame. Experimental disciples received no resources, no guidance, no help. They worked for their own food and survival. Most gave up and left, unable to bear the humiliation. Only a handful remained. Among 3,000 disciples, you could count them on your fingers. Kai Yang refused to quit. His hut stood in the farthest, most deserted corner of the grounds, a shack he'd built himself. When it rained, water pooled inside. His clothes were self-made, his meals self-earned. Yet through it all, he endured. Months ago, when he was officially demoted, he took up sweeping to survive. It was thankless work, but he kept at it. Cold, hungry, and exhausted, he never once considered giving up. There was a certain stubbornness in him, a refusal to look back once a path was chosen. As the sky brightened, his broom moved rhythmically across the ground. Sweat rolled down his temples, not from the work itself, but from his frail body and empty stomach. Soon, other Sky Tower disciples began gathering nearby, not to train but to watch. They surrounded him like vultures, eyes gleaming with mockery and anticipation. "Too many people for this, don't you think?" one of them muttered. "Who cares? He's just a failure who doesn't know when to leave." Kai Yang ignored them. He had long grown used to these humiliations. They came every few days like clockwork, waiting to challenge him for the meager resources he had left. As the crowd grew, 30, maybe 40 people, the air grew tense. Everyone knew why they were there. Kai Yang stopped sweeping and sat cross-legged, breathing deeply to recover what little energy he could. The circle of disciples tightened around him. Someone sneered. "Kai Yang, don't bother restoring your strength. You'll lose anyway." Another laughed. "Just lie down and let me hit you. I'll make it quick." Their words were sharp, but Kai Yang didn't flinch. He just sat there, calm as a mountain. Then, the Sky Tower's bell rang 9 times. The rising sun cast golden light across the courtyard. Kai Yang stood, lifted his broom, and faced his hecklers. "All right," one called out, grinning. "Choose your opponent." The crowd erupted. "Pick me. I'll end it in one strike. Choose me. I'll make it painless. Over here. I've been waiting weeks." Kai Yang said nothing. He simply tossed his broom high into the air. Every eye followed it as it spun and clattered to the ground, its head pointing toward a tall, burly youth. Laughter broke out. Huh, looks like it's your turn, Zhou Dingjun. The boy stepped forward proudly. Fellow disciples, I'll take it from here. Kaiyang faced him, his tone even. Experimental disciple Kaiyang. Tempered body, third stage. Ordinary disciple, Zhou Dingjun. Tempered body, fifth stage. In Sky Tower, disciples were ranked ordinary, lower base, elite, and core. Zhou Dingjun was merely an ordinary disciple, yet even that placed him above Kaiyang. The hierarchy was merciless, but it drove them all to fight harder. This was the tower's way. To survive, you fought. To rise, you bled. And for Kaiyang, every fight was one step closer to redemption. Sky Tower had one rule everyone knew. Any disciple could be challenged once every 5 days. A challenger could be up to 3 ranks higher. Otherwise, the target could refuse. Winners earned contribution points, main gate contribution points, while losers lost them. In Sky Tower, contribution points were currency. You could trade them for gear, secret techniques, or supplies from the main gate logistics department. Points could be converted to gold and silver, but most disciples hoarded them. They were too valuable to waste. There were other ways to earn points, treasure hunts, assigned missions, but the most common route was straightforward dueling. Beat someone in combat and you earn points. Lose, and you paid the price. So when a morning crowd pressed in around Kaiyang, it was like watching fruit about to fall. His name carried a reputation. Experimental disciple, constant loser. Every 5 days the same chance came, and those who had not yet challenged him were eager. Free points were tempting, even if each victory brought only a little reward. Please instruct, Kaiyang called, accepting the routine humiliation. He always attacked first. Small, thin, and hungry, he nevertheless threw himself into each fight with everything he had, stepped forward, a straight punch to the chest, then a tiger fist. The Shaolin fist was basic training for every disciple, a foundation to build on. Zhou Dingjun was 2 levels above him. He didn't bother to be cautious. He read Kaiyang's attack, sidestepped, and let Kaiyang strike graze past. A counter hit Kaiyang's solar plexus. Pain flared, and he retreated. For a beat, Zhou Ding was surprised. His opponent had reacted quick enough to disrupt his rhythm. But the surprise did not change the outcome. With higher cultivation and greater strength, Zhou used the opening to seize control. Kaiyang's next move was sudden, a quick kick at Zhou's leg. He had more combat sense than technique, and his leg sweep had a shred of practicality. It forced Zhou to adjust. For a moment, the burly disciple's composure wavered. But strength mattered. Kaiyang's body was frail from malnutrition. He hit Zhou, and the shock of the impact carried him off balance. The stronger man's fist landed. Kaiyang flew back. They watched stunned. This thin failure had a speed and courage that made the hit look strange. Zhou had landed, but Kai felt no victory. "Senior, ease up," he said to himself, bitter at how hollow the wind felt. Kaiyang rose again without hesitation. He charged. 3 feet out, he swept his leg, aiming to topple Zhou. The technique found nothing but air. The strain snapped him off his feet. Over and over he was hurled away, pong, and he rose again, jaw set. Again, Kaiyang rasped, each time gritting his teeth as he staggered back to his feet. The persistent ones drifted off, bored. The others stayed, talking now not about the prize but about the man. That Kaiyang, he gets up every time. He won't quit. The crowd's tone shifted from scorn to a kind of reluctant respect. Zhou Ding's face tightened. He hadn't expected such stubbornness. After being sent hurtling 7 or 8 times, face swollen, eyes ringed purple, breathing ragged, Kaiyang kept coming. Finally, Zhou's patience snapped. "Are you crazy?" he spat. "Throw in a towel, or you'll die."
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Within the Tower disciples' internal struggles, every year there are many who die. Zhou Dingjun, seeing this unflinching and courageous brother, couldn't help but feel a bit alarmed. When he thought that, Zhou Dingjun knew he couldn't reach such a degree and was afraid that he would have to surrender. Keep your cool. Well, then you will not be afraid to be burned. This is the way of life, to stubbornly follow your decision. This is perseverance. Despite Kai Yang's sorry figure, his eyes were becoming more and more powerful. Zhou Dingjun knew that if he didn't settle things now, then there will be no end. Thinking of this, Zhou Dingjun rushed forward to execute a palm knife to Kai Yang's neck bone. Kai Yang, with an imposing manner, swiftly escaped. Then his eyes clouded, and he fell limply to the ground. Seeing this scene, tens of feet higher, a disciple who was sitting on a tree branch took out a small book. Flipping the page, she wrote, "Trial Disciple Kai Yang versus Ordinary Disciple Zhou Dingjun. Zhou Dingjun wins. TLN. Experimental Disciple will now become Trial Disciple." The person who was on the tree branch had a graceful figure. It obviously was a woman. It was just that black mask on her face didn't allow people to see her face. But those delicate eyebrows proved that this person was not old. The armband on her arm also indicated her identity, a Sky Tower Dark Hall disciple. Sky Tower's Dark Hall is a special sector. The school's 3 main elders were responsible for governing, and the hall disciples were responsible to recording down all affairs of the school. No matter how big or small, all matters are recorded. This also included the results of duels between disciples. So for all battles within the school, you do not have to worry about not being able to prove your wins and earning contribution points. For in the shadows, Dark Hall disciples will record them down for you and summarize your monthly records. This woman, after recording the outcome for this duel, took out another smaller book from her waist and opened up at May 7th century, 14 years Kai Yang's 147th defeat. Even if you remove this, above are numerous records of Kai Yang's battles. From the first battle to the most recent, all had one word: defeat. 147 battles in a row, he had lost every single one of them. This simply could be said that since the school's history, it was a unique record and was enough to be awe-inspiring. Though the owner of this record was lying on the ground, not knowing if they were dead or alive, Kai Yang had never challenged others, so these 147 losses were from others challenging him. So to say, from being challenged once every 5 days, this had lasted for 2 years. Looking at Kai Yang on the ground, she wrinkled her eyebrows. She didn't understand how Yang Kai could endure to this state. He had already become the tower's trial disciple. Even his very survival was endangered. So why did he still linger? If he had left, then his life will certainly be better. This thin boy, what kind of dedication did he have? Even with 147 straight losses, he remains undaunted. Perhaps this is a man's folly? Taking notice of Kai Yang was also a moment's coincidence. When Xiaoning Chang became a Dark Hall disciple, she was placed in charge of monitoring this area. Yang Kai was challenged every time, not once, not twice, and every single time she saw him being beaten to near death. Xiaoning Chang began to pay attention to this tempered body third-stage youth. She was really curious, with his strength, how long could he endure before finally leaving Sky Tower? This type of talent, this type of training speed, he really was not fit to remain here. The ordinary world is his place. The people below had already long scattered. Only Kai Yang was still there on the ground. Coming and going, time passed by. Xiaoning Chang disappeared from the branch in a flash. When Kai Yang woke up, it was already 3 o'clock. There was nowhere on his body that didn't hurt. Staggering, he stood up and looked up, only to be surprised. For the place in which he woke up from was under the shade of a tree and not where he fainted. This was really surprising. Was there a fellow disciple that was kind enough to carry him over? This had never happened before, causing Kai Yang to furrow his brows. He could vaguely remember there was a shadowy figure darting in front of him, but memory was too vague. Thinking harder just made it more unclear. But between his current position and the place he fainted, there was very distinct drag marks, clearly showing that he had been dragged over. Once again, he felt his back, immediately flaring hot pain, spread out. Kai Yang froze for a moment, becoming furious. The trace of goodwill he felt towards his benefactor had quickly disappeared. That person directly dragged him over. Otherwise, how could his back bled like this? He might as just have left him there on the ground. Kai Yang thought to himself. Being depressed, Kai Yang realized that in his right hand he was clutching something. Looking down in doubt, he was surprised to find a small, fine work of porcelain in his hand. What is this? This was definitely not his, for the only things that Kai Yang owned were the clothes on his back and his broom. How could he have this? The small porcelain bottle had a label. Yang Kao read out, blood clotting cream. Blood clotting cream. Kai Yang knew of this. This was the school's cream to help heal wounds. Although it was ordinary, its effects were very good. Generally, disciples will carry one bottle around for emergency uses. This one bottle of cream in Sky Tower Logistics was very expensive. 10 points of contribution was the bottle's cost. How much contribution points can Kai Yang earn for sweeping for a month? He can only earn 10 points. In other words, this one bottle's worth was equal to 1 month of work for him. Who was it? At this moment, the resentment Kai Yang had towards this person was reduced greatly. But as he moved, the pain flared up again. He had already come to this tower for 3 years. 3 years. Within this time, Yang Kai had already gotten used to the lack of compassion between disciples. But today, for this person to leave behind a bottle of blood clotting cream for him greatly touched Yang Kai's hearts. Originally, he had thought all the disciples were cold-blooded people. Perhaps this bottle of cream was not worth much to them. But to Kai Yang currently, he desperately needed it. There was a saying, dripping water is grace, is hard to forget even when one's teeth fall out. TLN, meaning one small kindness must be remembered eternally and returned. Kai Yang was both grateful and tried to remember who it was. It was becoming harder to remember. He could only recall the thin strand of fragrance lingering around. Was this medicine this fragrant? Kai Yang pondered. Calming down and straightening his clothes, he carefully put the bottle away. Kai Yang re-picked up his broom and commenced his work. Inside and outside, all were swept. Then at midnight, his work was considered completed. Kai Yang dragged his tired and hungry body back to his hut. The morning's battle wounds had yet to be treated. Even when Kai Yang was starving, he could only endure. First treat the injuries, then deal with the hunger. Taking off his clothes, he then carried over a tub of water to wash his body. If someone were to be by his side and look at Kai Yang's body, they would cry out in shock. Kai Yang's bones, along with his ribs, were all clearly visible. It was clear that his body didn't have much flesh on it and lacked nutrition. There were also bruises and scars littering his body everywhere. There was practically no place that wasn't scarred. Every 5 days he was challenged, every time he lost, every time he was knocked unconscious. When old injuries had yet to fade, new ones were added. Switching to any other person, they would be unable to tolerate this pain, but Kai Yang did. Not only did he bear with it, but he continued his daily sweeping, not letting those injuries affect him. And also slightly spicy. Putting his clothes back on, he went to get the dark-colored sweet potato and wolfed it down. Kai Yang then plunked down on his bed and soon fell asleep. The holes in the small roof allowed some light to seep in, lighting up the hut. The hut was extremely sparse. There was no table or chairs. Only one small bed with a deerskin blanket and square-shaped pillow. This was all of Kai Yang's possessions. The deerskin was from a deer Kai Yang hunted previously. Although it was not thick, it was still warm. While his pillow was from his time outside the school when he was hunting, he happened to pick up. Pillow was a square, a foot long, and 3 fingers thick. It looked like stone, felt like one, but didn't bear the weight a stone should. Kai Yang didn't know what it was, but used it as a pillow and didn't investigate further. This blackstone pillow had already been with Kai Yang for a year already, yet he still didn't know what it was. Nonetheless, it was a great pillow. Fast asleep, Kai Yang dreamed of today's battle. Time and time again, he was hit flying away by Zhou Dingjun. And time again, he would stand back up, persevering and continuing with a blood crest on his chest. As the dream continues, the blood crest became more and more powerful. Kai Yang's sleeping face was clenched up in pain, but you could see it was resolute. He only had one goal in his heart: to succeed. Even if he was ordered to cut off his foot or fry his body in flames, he would not cower in fear. The unconscious Kai Yang didn't take notice that the pillow below his had started to exclude a clouded light that corresponded with his moods. This light became more and more luminous. In the dream, Kai Yang continued with his early morning encounter with Zhou Ding Jun, repeatedly getting knocked to the ground. At his 1000th time of getting knocked and getting back up, with his unwavering will suddenly broke through. He rushed mercilessly towards Zhou Ding Jun, who immediately fell to the ground. Zhou Ding Jun's figure then became hazy and morphed into his own figure. At this moment, Kai Yang's mind calmed down, though it wasn't due to him beating his opponent, but he winning against himself, winning against his inner fear and yielding heart. A faint feeling gradually rose up. There is no longer anything under the sky that can make him submit to them. In reality, the black pillow under Kai Yang's head suddenly burst forth a black ray. This black ray emerged from the black stone and hovered in the air for a bit before drilling into Yang Kai's head, instantly disappearing from sight. At the same time, in an ancient and desolate place, a strange presence descended. Like tidal waves, the collapse of snow, any person in front of him was insignificant, that strange presence thought. Kai Yang suddenly opened his eyes, his whole body sweating and bursting with fear. He was awoken by that strange presence. Calming himself, he forced a smile. One was dreaming he could actually scare himself like that. It's ridiculous. Rubbing his face, he looked up into the night sky to determine the time, and was annoyed. He had only slept for 2 hours, seeing it was quite dark outside. Hurriedly, he got up, folded up the deerskin blanket, and repositioned the black stone pillow. As he got up, he frowned and turned to look back at the pillow. This feeling, his gut told him that it was not the same. Under doubts, Kai Yang reached out towards the pillow and picked it up. He was correct. Its weight had decreased a lot. Strange. How can this block stone suddenly become so light? Questioning this, more questions started to appear. It was like a thick book was being thrown into the air, with the pages spread out as it landed. Kai Yang was flabbergasted, momentarily forgetting to catch it. Pa! The black stone pillow fell to the ground and opened up like a book. He couldn't believe it, even though it was spread out in front of him. Wasn't this a stone? How could it suddenly turn into a book? The black stone pillow had been with Kai Yang for over a year already. He was very clear. Did he not previously find a black stone and not a book? Did an old turtle take off his shell and become a snake? A while ago, when he stooped down to pick up the book, and he immediately felt a connection with it. Looking at it again, he really had to admit it was the pillow he was using. This thick book left him speechless, though there were no words. It was empty, but the book's pages couldn't let him see through it. He gently tried to tear a page, but he couldn't tear it at all. It really makes him rethink. He had owned it for an entire year, and only just discovered its true colors. But such an empty black book, what is its use? He inspected the book all over, and still nothing. Mysterious. Kai Yang turned to the first page, and nothing. Staring at the blank book page. With little effort, he still found little change to the page. Then he discovered there was a little change to the page. The strange presence that appeared in the desolate place of his dream had appeared again. A line of golden-colored characters had started to appear. Blood is sighted, the golden body descends. Not a miracle, but a golden immortal. This penetrated deep into the soul, which caused Kai Yang to slam the book shut, with his limbs shaking uncontrollably. Breathing deeply, he managed to calm his heart down a bit. What secrets did this black book hide? He didn't know it all, but he knew that this object he obtained from Black Wind Mountains contains great history. After a long period of silence, he once again opened the black book. This time, he read the first line on the page. Turns out, it wasn't a dream. Gradually, other lines slowly appeared. Proud golden body rules the fence. Indomitable spirit will it descend. 8 lines and 32 words occupied an entire page, giving one a dominating heavenly and earthly feeling, as if those words were imbued with domineering spirit. These 32 words' meanings were very easy to understand. Naturally, Kai Yang understood. But the Black Book's history was unclear, thus he was a bit afraid. What if this was a trap of some sort? Thinking of this, he laughed at himself, for currently he was only a trial's disciple of Sky Towers, who would go to the effort of taking care of him. From just looking at the last couple of lines and their meaning, the reason why the Blackstone pillow will turn into a Black Book was probably because of his dream tonight. For over 1 year, the pillow didn't change. Then suddenly after that dream, it turned into a book. They must be connected. Is it because of his own change that also changed the Blackstone pillow? Since it was I who led to the book's birth, then this Black Book was born for me. Thus, I am this Black Book's owner. Thinking of this, Kaiyang hesitated no more. The writing clearly on the book clearly states that he must drip blood in order to lead. Thinking of this, he bit onto his finger hardly and dripped a drop of blood onto the page. Drip, drip. The blood went onto the page, but there was no apparent change. After a fair amount of time passed, from the page, black light started to emerge. His body immediately felt unwell, for the injuries from earlier today had started to sear in pain. His head had also started to hurt. Biting down on his teeth, he continued to endure. His blood continued to flow, and the light on the book was becoming brighter and brighter. After a large amount of time and effort, Kaiyang nearly fainted. But there had been substantial change to the book, and the black light had started to wiggle and contract. And from the center of the page, a tiny vortex had appeared. Following that, from within the vortex, a golden swirl could be seen. Kaiyang put great effort to maintain a clear mind, staring intently to the transformation in front of him. Within the black vortex, a small, round, shiny black object gradually came out. He was shocked, for there really was something into the book. Even though while he was dripping his blood, he had some expectations, he didn't think that this was actually true. But right now, right in front of him, the 30 words from before were not false. Blood is sighted, the golden body descends. So what kind of golden body is it? Anticipation covered his pale face. After a while, after the shiny, round thing had fully appeared in front of him, he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. No matter how rich his imagination was, he wouldn't have thought that the golden body would be like this. This thing was about 30 centimeters high, golden skeleton, and to think the first thing that came out was this skeleton skull. The golden skull just floated on top of the book page, sitting cross-legged like it was mediating, every bone lighting up Kaiyang's tiny hut. The black vortex on the page slowly began to recede, and everything reverted back to its tranquil state. Kaiyang had watched this strange golden skull appeared. For a time, did not know how to react. On page, said only how to get the golden body out, but didn't say what to do after it came out. Looking at it, he thought there wasn't something right. The golden skeleton in front of him had no eyes, but he felt like it looked like his own. It obviously didn't have any mouth, but was clearly mocking its weakness. Thinking of this, Kaiyang was furious and went to pick it up. This small, insignificant skeleton dares to be arrogant. He didn't think that when he went to reach out for it, the golden skeleton flew out towards him, flying past his hand and embedded himself on his chest. This was a bit of a horror. With the skeleton smashing onto his chest, he cried out, and then the skeleton started to emit a fluorescent light and penetrated deep into the pores of Kaiyang's limbs. Suddenly, pain exploded all over his body, but the pain was not an ordinary pain, but the pain from the depths of the bone. He breathed in painfully, fell to the ground, his body bent like shrimp with waves of cramps. His whole body's bones shattered in that moment, and he couldn't even lift a finger, for he had no strength. This was not an illusion. If you could see into his body, then you can see his bones being crushed, and next to each crushed bone, there was a layer of gold wrapped around, continuously repairing the broken bones, but far slower than the damage speed. When the repair was finished, it was crushed again. Human bones wrapped around bone marrow and bone marrow nerve. Any small touch to them can bring great harm. One can only imagine his suffering at that moment. In his body, not a single bone wasn't shattered. Even for others, even if their strength of thousands of times higher than his, they would have probably fainted now. But with Kaiyang, he could only feel the pain 1,000-fold right now. Tragic cry came from the hut, Not far away, a fellow disciple was out for a walk, was frightened by the cry, and quickly ran away. From somewhere, he received a message that came from this golden body. Destroy Kai Yang's consciousness and seize his body. Did Kai Yang agree? Even if he was unable to move, but also struggled to maintain the awareness, he will never let Golden Body take over the magpie nest. The Golden Body felt fear, so over and over again crushed Yang Kai's bones, tortured his nerves, so that he fainted thereon. One is a proud golden statue, another with an indomitable spirit. Who wins, who loses, one cannot see the outcome. Kai Yang knew that right now it was really important, unlike the previous challenges with his fellow disciples. If this was the past him, then he would have given up, but now he will not. Even if it hurts, like hell will endure. His consciousness, the golden body's destructive power, both commenced a hard tug of war. And the battlefield is the Kai Yang's body. You pull, I pull, each not letting an inch go. Over time, Kai Yang was surprised to find that the intolerable pain was slowly reducing, help lift his spirits, and fill him full of energy. It's no wonder, after Kai Yang and the golden body clashed time and time again, the numerous crushing of his bones had strengthened them. With his bones becoming stronger and stronger, and the golden body's powers becoming weaker and weaker, the pain thus naturally alleviated. The struggle will soon end. With the scales tipping in his favor, the unbearable pain slowly became bearable, transforming into light tickles, then becoming like splashes of cold water. This feeling was like applying cream, allowing his millions of pores to open and relax. Aware of the golden body's desperate struggle, made Kai Yang furious. Cursing loudly, he crushed that presence within him. Inside his body, it had finally calmed down. A sigh could be heard, a sigh full of comfort and trace of great relief. After quietly lying on the ground for more than an hour, Kai Yang stood up, for he had just used up all his strength. An hour before, Kai Yang felt it was like a dream. He really could not believe this was true. Quietly, he punched himself and felt the pain. In the end, what history does this black book have? He muttered to himself in helplessness. Waiting until his heart stopped beating, he suddenly found himself somewhat different from before. For he couldn't eat 3 fulfilling meals a day, and every 5 days he would suffer beatings. Thus his body bones are weak, but now he clearly perceived that his bones were full of vitality. A surge of energy, filled with warmth, slowly circulated inside and outside his body. Moving slightly, the bones burst out a crystal-clear sound, making it seem like a melody being played. And he who was hurt today couldn't feel the pain anymore. Aware of this, Kai Yang quickly rolled up his sleeves and opened his clothes. Looking closely, he found that his body no longer had any bruises and injuries. They had actually all disappeared, even those old wounds were healed. Feeling as unblemished as a newborn baby, rubbing the places that previously held wounds, dead skin fell. This revealed the new tender skin underneath, like a baby's, but far more healthier. I cry. He swallowed down a cold lump, thinking of that golden skeleton in his body had such a strong recovery ability, then feeling his own strength and found that he was still at the temper body 3rd stage with no change. This discovery somewhat made him a little disappointed. Rivers and illusions, with secrets known only to insiders. This type of story Kai Yang heard much during his childhood. He knew in world there are many men eligible to jump past the Dragon Gate, becoming powerful and famous. But after all, it's just a story. How many people can really be happy and gain such luck and results in this world? Those senior experts with greater strength, the more I could not bear to lower themselves with earth and buried. Always finding inheritor before death. I want to jump off a cliff, drill a cave, and encounter events. Such unlikely things will happen. But the current problem had happened to him. That black must have great background, and that old golden skeleton must be extraordinary. This can be said as his good fortune. It could also be said as fate. The 4 sentences on the black book's first page: proud golden body rules the fence, indomitable spirit, will it descend? If he didn't pick up the black book, but another picked it up, they too will treat it was garbage. unable to prise open like MT-Tai. Precisely because he picked it up and used it as a pillow for a year, it felt his body's unyielding and tough nature, unlocking me of the secret Black Book today. In other words, this thing really is his first encounter, but it's the first achievement that he obtained through his own hands. Thought of this, Kai Yong's sudden burst comfortable is called the BMW with a good saddle, beauty gifts hero. That Black Book. Thinking of it suddenly, this book that was his pillow for over a year. He wasn't anxious to find out what it was, nor how he found it. Between being anxious and somewhat weakened in the body, the Black Book abruptly appeared in front of Kai Yong and snapped shut, falling to the ground. He was stunned. Picking up the book, he furrowed his eyebrows while thinking hard. Struck with an idea, a move from his hands, the book disappeared. And a further move made it appear again. This scene was like a magic trick. One could see that Kai Yang's face was very solemn, because he truly felt that the Black Book could escape into his body with a single thought. This Black Book possibly be made from a soul stone. After saying it, he nearly gave himself a fright. A soul stone. This was considered a legendary gem. Only when hundreds of millions of ghosts gather in the abyss, and with the help of vast amounts of human vitality, will it start to form. Rumor has it that this is how it was formed. Inside the Black Stone, with misery of 100 million lives, the living cannot enter, and green grass can't think to grow. Those words were somewhat exaggerated. But for a soul stone about 3.5 centimeters x 3.5 centimeters to form, how many lives must be taken? The formation of this mythical rock was really cruel and bloody. What every life near it during its creation will be dead within milliseconds. Also, the formation time is unimaginable. It could add up to a millennium or even 10 millenniums. Putting the formation process aside, this soul stone can be considered a supreme treasure. That is because it has a very unique ability, for it can be melded with one's body and also open up a dimension. This space is quite flexible. Storing things will be no hassle. Even though Kai Yong is only a trial disciple, a humble position, his experiences were not lacking. Not to mention, the story of the legendary soul stone has been around more many years. Anyone would know the story. When he just obtained this Black Book, he didn't think about this. Thinking about how the books went into his body, he thought about how the golden skeleton came out from the book. How could he not recognize the book's material? He immediately started sweating. Soul stones were the things of legends, long extinct in the world. He didn't think that he will be able to encounter one, let alone such a large one. The legends only talked about 3.5 centimeters x 3.5 centimeters sized soul stones, for it was only found that large. Even at that size, it was priceless. But the only in front of him was somehow made into a Black Book that was 30 by 7 centimeters. Its value was immeasurable. If this news were to spread out, even if it's the entire Han dynasty, not mention a mere martial school, they will probably be crushed overnight to obtain it. Kai Yong couldn't help but feel his hands heat up. This heart had not forgotten the terror, but luckily it could be taken into his body. Otherwise, he would be in great danger. His body hiding this treasure, he swiftly escaped back into his hut. He dared not to be carelessly, while his heart beat madly. He was becoming more and more excited, whilst also becoming more and more uneasy. HI's strength was currently too low, so how could he guard this treasure? Even though the Black Book could be taken into his body, eliminating chances of being discovered, this didn't lessen the worry in his heart. Only practice, only the strong will be able to protect what is theirs. Thinking about what happened 3 years ago, Kai Yang's eyes gradually calmed down. All on his, without any support, he came to this school. It was not for practice and strength. Even though he obtained this book, he took it into his hands. On the first page was the proud golden body. Even though he didn't know what use it had, it couldn't be useless. This book also had so many pages, it couldn't only possess this one golden body. Although Kai Yong is only 15 this year, due to his experiences these past 3 years, he is far more mature than his peers. It is also because of this that he forged this unyielding character. So when he calmed down, sitting on his bed, he carefully started to read the first page. After confirming there were no extra things popping out of the first page, he started to read the second page. With his previous experiences, his actions seemed more natural and knowledgeable. And then Kai Yang's eyes slowly widened as golden words emerged on the dark pages. Proud, golden body, tempered body record. Previously his mood had dropped, but now it soared. Sure enough, as he suspected, every page had something hidden. Almost without thinking, Kai Yang's entire mind was focused on the second page of the book. Abruptly, the golden characters flew off the pages like a fish and swiftly drilled themselves in Kai Yang's brain. The glow enveloped the darkness around him and then disappeared. After it was gone, he felt as if his brain had gained new information. This had all come from the golden characters. Calming his heart, Kai Yang closed his eyes and began to digest the information. In fact, he didn't need to digest and absorb the information. For when the characters imprinted themselves into his brain, he was already able to comprehend their meaning with ease. A full mastery in another sense. This is the tempered body record. Yang Kai muttered, for he found that it was a fist technique. Though it may seem simple, in reality it was not. In order to perform it, there were strict requirements, for it is extremely profound. In order to cultivate it, you must be facing the rising sun in the east to learn it. So at most, you could only practice for half an hour a day. Currently, it was night, so he had to wait at least 5-6 hours to start. This frustrated Kai Yang, for he had exerted himself all day and only ate one measly sweet potato. Nonetheless, he had obtained a priceless treasure and was jubilant. After trying to sleep for half an hour, he decided to analyze the third page of the black book. But it just let him down. No matter how much he checked and flipped, there were no changes to the page. While doing this, he fell asleep. When Yang Kai then woke up, it was nearly sunrise. The pre-dawn darkness was clouded and stillness covered the whole area, with the occasional insect and bird noises. With his heart looking forward to what was going to happen, Kai Yang quickly leapt out of bed and went to the front of the cabin. Standing there, he took a few deep breaths and let his body slowly relax. Oriental? A touch of gray dawn appeared. Then he opened his eyes. The set of instructions on the fist technique was practiced countless, hundreds of times. His hands shaped into a palm, with a gentle, slow movement, pushing to the left, to the right, pushing forward. Embracing the world in his mind, everything in between the palm, the vast land, even the air covering the moon and stars. Left foot forward, right next to the horizon, the right foot stepped powerfully like the king of the underworld. Between breaths, the world was full of vitality, like spring flowers blooming. The autumn wind blew, like a golden message. Then the cold wind whistled by, signaling the coming of snow, ice-cold snow. Yang Kai's look gradually deepened. Slowly his fists pressed on the hefty rocks. In any case, the rock didn't hint at opening anytime soon. With a burst of sound, Kai Yang, with a pale face, suddenly staggered, nearly fell to his knees. While exercising countless times in his mind, he discovered that this art was an absolute fist. Kai Yang never expected this record actually contained such mysterious, quenching body technique. For just that short while, Kai Yang felt that the entire world was weighing on his shoulders. But he also felt that he could sense all things in the world under this pressure. This quenching body record was not the practice of fist techniques. It was the practice of worldly transformation and the fate of the world. This practice was full of ups and downs, joys and sorrows. A slow punch and kick-in could affect the power of heaven and earth, but also was full of secret rules. When he launched his 6 palms, it took 3 steps. This result wasn't even 1% of the result recorded in the book. Just that had been difficult to sustain. Then a crack emitted from his spine, making him believe that he broke his spine. He quickly inspected it, but only found that his back was in some pain. It wasn't anything big. Stealing his mind, Kai Yang once again started to practice according to the tempered body record. Because he wasn't psychologically prepared, Kai Yang's mind was in a trance. Feeling unclear, he held his breath to regain a clear mind. Accompanied by a slow dance of his fists, Kaiyang once again felt his mind had become clear and regained the atmosphere required to continue. Then his body emitted several indistinct feelings. Kaiyang was uncertain as to what they were. Not only that, with the routine deployment, his fist was actually heavier, like being at the bottom of the ocean. With more hardships, there were more improvements. Kaka sound could be heard. Kaiyang's every action made his bones explode like firecrackers. Excruciating pain permeated throughout his body, but he was unmoved. His tenacity at this moment vividly appeared. In the blink of an eye, Kaiyang felt his hands and feet tremble like they were beaten to pulp. It was like heaven and earth both imposed themselves on his body. Persisting, he didn't falter. Suddenly a warmth surged, alleviating the pain within his body in this moment. Spirits lifted, he restarted practice. He knew that this must have been due to the integration of the golden skeleton. After all, both of these things came from the same place. In front, the sun rising, near a cabin in a remote place of the school, stood a sweating young man, diligently practicing slow fists and discovering his future. Half an hour passed when Kaiyang suddenly felt light. He no longer felt the heavy pressure on his body. Right at this moment, he could no longer continue cultivating this skill. The record was very clear. You could only cultivate for half an hour every day at sunrise. His efforts seemed to have drained him. Thus Kaiyang fell to the ground in a heap and took a deep breath. A surge of purple gas accompanied his breath and disappeared. In an instant, he felt refreshed and energized. Looking distracted, he couldn't help but be shocked. Atmosphere sense. He had already developed a sense to the atmosphere. That is to say, he had broken through the tempered body third stage and was entering the fourth stage. This news made him elated. Since entering Sky Tower, it took 3 years of practicing to reach the third stage. But after 30 minutes of practicing, the mysterious quenching body technique had let him break through and enter the fourth stage. The tempered body had 9 stages. Until the third stage, it really just enhanced one's physical capabilities. But after the fourth stage, it would generate a presence within the meridians. Only with the birth of atmosphere sense are you considered a true cultivator. Although at this time you will have the atmosphere sense, the body will still have no real strength. You could only wait for the 7th stage, where the body will develop its own strength all the way until the 9th stage. That is when the body breaks through and opens/creates a door to strength to the Kai Yuan boundary. Only then will you truly have strength. Kai Yuan boundary is a true warrior start. Everything in the tempered body territory was laying the foundations for the future of the Kai Yuan boundary. This foundation was not finalized, like with a man's strength. For your bones, skin would grow continuously until you reach the peak. Kaiyang had just having entered the 4th stage and obtained atmosphere sense. To outsiders, this may not seem like much, but to him, it was great news and progress. Half an hour after he broke through, the results of quenching body record were evident. Although his own knowledge contributed, if not for that technique, he believed that he needed another 3-4 months before advancing. With this, he breathed in deeply and exhaled out the impurities in his body. From within his mouth, out came a pitch-black smoke, filthy as it tumbled to the ground. After expectorating this smoke out, his 6 senses all became more acute and sharpened. TLN, he's been possessed by a demon. Supernatural style, senses, sound, touch, sight, taste, smell, and 6th sense instinct. Was this his body's impurity? Kaiyang shook on the spot. With the practice of cultivation, you will reduce and drain the body of impurities each time. Kaiyang previously had experienced this, but never at this level. Numerous ideas and joy lingered in his mind. Although he had successfully entered the 4th layer, he had made no real progress in the tempered body record's fist technique. His daily practice could only produce 1% of the total result out of the 101 punches. Hasty men don't eat hot tofu, and with a hasty heart, you won't be able to feel a hot butt. TLN, saying that have patience and results will come. If you rush, you will miss things. Thinking for a while, Kaiyang planned a bit of his future. Even though it wasn't thorough, He could no longer be like how he had been, taking each step as it came. For after a while, you couldn't help but become impatient. Then after eating something, he continued to sweep the area. Although he was a sweeper, it didn't mean that he needed to sweep the entire school. He was only responsible for 1/10 of the school. Even though it was cumbersome, it would only take an hour or so. Within the trees, Xiaoning Chong had started to monitor the disciples and inadvertently saw Kai Yang sweeping away. To not have some emotions would be weird. Today there was something different about him, but she wasn't sure. For over half an hour, he hadn't left that spot, sweeping it until it was shiny and spotless. It was so slick that if a mosquito were to go on, it would have a sprained ankle. TLN, trying to express how clean it is. This author has a major issue with mosquitoes, I say. This guy, Xiaoning Chong, didn't know what to do with him. At that moment, Kai Yang was thinking about other things. Yesterday, he had obtained a huge opportunity, so naturally, he was considering his future. But no real options were found. He could only continue to practice at sunrise every day, for now. While he was pondering, rapid footsteps approached quickly from behind. He quickly went to dodge, but didn't realize that the other party was making preparations to avoid him too. So they crashed into each other. Though he didn't sustain any major injuries, when he crashed into that person, it felt as if he had crashed into a steel wall. With a cry, he fell to the ground, and the place he bumped felt numb. Kai Yang quickly recovered and apologetically asked, "This fellow disciple, are you okay?" The young man was annoyed, and when he looked up to see that it was Kai Yang, that explosive anger dissipated. Holding anger for such person held no meaning, and it was also his own fault. Replying immediately while waving his hands, it's all right. While saying this and getting up, he then energetically ran away. Kai Yang asked, "Fellow disciple, where are you going to hurriedly?" The young man faintly shouted, "The contribution hall. Where else?" Listening to his words, Kai Yang realized that today was already the 8th day of the month. It was the day where the main gate distributed last month's contribution points. So every month of this day, the logistics department would be crowded with disciples flocking to collect their points. With these points, they could exchange them for various cultivation pills, treasures, and martial arts to improve their strength. So this day made all disciples all excited. Some were excited, while others disappointed. Kai Yang was of the latter. Startled, he couldn't help but frown. Each month, the amount of points he received was quite meager. Sweepers could earn 10 points, but in the last month he was challenged 6 times, and each time he lost. With reductions after each loss, he was only left with 4 points. This really made people cry. Fortunately, he was only a trial disciple. His status was the lowest, so if he lost, he would only lose 1 point. Normal disciples lost too. Thinking of this, Kai Yang was thankful. But even a small mosquito has flesh. And with his savings, he will one day earn enough to exchange them for something worthwhile. TLN, again, what does the author have with mosquitoes? There had been enough delay today, he thought as he continued to sweep. When he had finally finished the job, it was noon. Time to go to the hall to collect his points. After the morning's bustle, the hall was now deserted and quiet. Thankfully, he hadn't came in the morning, or the wait would have been too troublesome. Waltzing into the hall, you could clearly see an old man dozing away. This old man was the treasurer of the school. He was about 50 with thin, white hair and a kind face. Looking at him, he looked harmless to animals and humans, but Kai Yang knew he was a sly fox. There was once an elite disciple who dared to act arrogant here, and was then pushed out of the hall a few hundred feet. His life was almost taken. Kai Yang was present. So he knew this, and also knew that his old man held unfathomable strength. Stepping into the view of the old man, Kai Yang could clearly see the old man snoring away. This old thing. Don't know which female Sky Tower disciple he is dreaming about again. AD doesn't even give the old guy the benefit of the doubt. Oh. Holding a broom, he gently nudged the old man while softly calling, "Treasurer Meng." The old man's surname was Meng. His first name, Kai Yang didn't know, so he couldn't call him that. Tapping the counter a few times, the old man was finally awoken. He groggily opened up his eyes and saw that it was Kai Yang. Wrinkling his face as if he saw S***T. TLN, for young viewers, just in case. What's with that face? Kaiyang asked indignantly, rolling his eyes. Why didn't you come in the morning? Confidently, he replied. There were too many people in the morning, and currently it's peaceful. Interrupting this old man's rest. Do you know what respecting the elderly means? Leaning in, Kaiyang whispered. Which young lady did you dream of? Suddenly full of energy, Treasurer Meng replied to Kaiyang with eyes full of contempt and loudly proclaimed. Your words just now tarnished this old man's reputation. Too outrageous. Good body figure. Great. Treasurer Meng unconsciously leaked out. GG, I had high hopes, but alas they were shattered. Supple legs, white skin, and a beautiful, thin waist. Immediately he nodded his head, immediately thinking Kaiyang as a friend. Kaiyang sneered. Treasurer Meng stammered and blushed as bright as a monkey's ass. Full of shame, he just wanted to dig a hole and crawl inside to hide. Throughout his years at Sky Tower, the only person Kaiyang really knew was Treasurer Meng. After all, he needed to go to him every month. Treasurer Meng had a nickname which most people referred to him as Bully Meng. Even though his position as a treasurer, he still liked to extort contribution points from other disciples. Take blood clotting cream, for example. Usually it would be sold around 10 contribution points. He will sell 2 bottles for the price of 3. Also, the amount of cream that should go in 2 bottles was put into 3. It's very simple, he said. Buy it or get lost. Of course, Treasurer Meng doesn't always do it, only occasionally. He only targets richer disciples. For poor people like Kaiyang, he doesn't even bother. Contribution points are hard to come by. So how could disciples stand by and be exploited? Every disciple that had been cheated by him would report him to the council. They have warned him numerous times, but he still continued, unmoved. Furthermore, his position is crucial, and there was no one who could replace him. Due to this, all of the school's disciples hated him to the utmost limit. That old man was ruthless to everybody, except Kaiyang, to whom he could do nothing. That was because one time he was peeking at a female disciple and was caught red-handed by him. No respect for the elderly. What a scandal. He was caught, so Treasurer Meng could only lower his head in front of Kaiyang. It was exactly because of this that Kaiyang became very familiar with the old man. The lecherous old man, with thick skin, quickly adjusted his attitude and said, Same as always? TLN, for those who don't know, thick skin is being very shameless. Yeah, Kaiyang said earnestly while nodding his head. Not saying a word, Treasurer Meng took out 10 silvers from within the counter and recorded it down. Taking the silvers, he asked, How many contribution points do I have now? Rolling his eyes, the treasurer replied, You earn 4 points each month and then use 1 point to exchange for 10 silvers. That leaves you with only 3 points to save, making a total of 12 points in your account. What? You want to exchange them for a bottle of blood clotting cream? No, I was just asking, he replied while muttering, 12, yeah, such a small amount. Even if you just wanted to exchange it for a small medicinal herb, it wouldn't even be enough. With a serious face, Treasurer Meng whispered to him, Little Kaiyang, you want to save up and exchange it for a tempered essence pellet. But to save up for it, and then to rank up with your speed, how long will that take? Won't I eventually reach it? He replied, chuckling. This left Treasurer Meng speechless. He thought that with his speed, by the time he makes it, this old man will have already been dead for many years. But Treasurer Meng, there is one thing I don't understand. Speak, the old man said while putting on I am in a good mood, so I will tell you attitude. The tempered essence pellet is a very precious medicine. How could it appear here? He speaking with a proud face. That is because this pellet is this old man's treasure. Others don't know about it. Ah, it's yours. This left Kaiyang stunned. He had always thought that this pellet belonged to the school. No wonder this old thing set such an astronomical price. Now, don't be angry, he joyfully said, while taking a drink from the teapot. I won't bully you. As long as you bring enough contribution points to exchange, old Meng will give it to you. For my word is not nothing. I will collect it, he said, nodding. With his face downcast, old Meng asked Kaiyang, I heard that yesterday you got a beating. Immediately, Kai Yang turned around and left. From behind, Treasurer Meng shouted, "Let this old man ask. Don't be in such a hurry to walk away," he said, but really he was gloating inside. Seeing that Kai Yang had no intention to stop, he straightened up and yelled, "Little Kai Yang, you should hurry up and leave. Sky Tower is no place for you to be. Sooner rather than later you will be killed." Pausing but without turning around, Kai Yang sighed. "I have no place to return to." He was finished if he left. After holding the teapot for a while, Treasurer Meng said, "Then why did you come?" "Tempered essence pellet." Hee, this expensive treasure, how could this old man possibly own it? He only made up this lie to give you hope. He had never thought you would take it seriously. Kai Yang then hurriedly went back to his hut and put the broom away, then briskly walked out. He was going to the small village outside of Tanglin to buy his food with his 10 slivers like he did every month. For the first time, this trip didn't make him feel tired. Previously, every time he walked down this path, he would get bad asthma attacks again and again. But this time, not only did this not happen, his body felt strengthened compared to before, felt less strained walking down the path. Even if he walked 100 miles, he felt that he wouldn't tire. Is it the golden skeleton? This made him think of something that happened this morning. While he was sweeping, another disciple had crashed into him, but on the contrary to what normally occurred, he had held his ground very stably, while the disciple had fell to the ground. Although this wasn't much, in retrospect it was unusual. With his weak physique, how could he not have fallen, but the other party fell? It had always been him who fell. Growing more and more excited, he thought about the changes the golden skeleton had brought to his body. Although these changes were small, gradually over the course of time, they could culminate into great changes. Thinking of this, Kai Yang recovered and soon walked to town. Looking around, he went to the left-hand side of the street. He was going to a rice shop. The shop wasn't big, and the owner is surnamed He and was a local resident. He treated all customers the same. This was one of the reasons why Kai Yang bought from him. Such a small store could be found everywhere. The reason why Black Plum Village was very busy was because in the surrounding area, apart them there was not only Sky Tower School, but also the Windy Rain sect. The relationship between the two could not be considered bad. The various other small schools couldn't compare to these two main sects, for they didn't even own their own land. It was precisely because of these two main sects that the village was able to sell many different weapons and maintain such a bustling environment full of many different wares, creating an environment just like the Han Dynasty's capital. After walking around for a while, Kai Yang inadvertently walked past an alley where some people were gathered. He didn't know what they were doing, but they were pretty suspicious and gave Kai Yang an extremely vicious glare. Chuckling lightly, he just followed the principle, if they don't harm me, I won't harm them. He just ignored them. But among those three, there was one who dressed in a similar fashion to Kai Yang. Kai Yang didn't think much of this, though, because they were in Black Plum Village, located close to Sky Tower. Other disciples coming down to the village was quite common. A little while ago, Kai Yang arrived at the line for rice. The line was quite long, the length of 2 stalls. The business was very prosperous, but only has one waiter running around serving. The boss was calculating about money on an abacus at the counter, while the wife greeted the guests. As more people finished ordering, the line gradually became shorter, and Kai Yang joined the line. "Madam," Kai Yang cried out. A 40-year-old-looking lady looked up to see who it was. When she saw it was Kai Yang, she suddenly smiled and said, "Ah, young man, you came to buy rice again." "Yes." He walked to the front of the counter and pointed a bag behind the counter and said, "Give me 1 bag, please." While the lady was tying up the bag with a string, she said, "Young man, you buy just 1 bag a month. Is this enough for you?" Kai Yang replied, "It's enough." "You're lying," the lady retorted while looking at Kai Yang. "Look at you, such thin arms and legs. If you're eating properly, then what's with the skinny arms and legs?" Young Kai smiled sheepishly. "I also go to the mountains to hunt, so therefore even with just 1 bag I won't be hungry." While the boss concentrated on calculating the bill, he whispered to her, "Go fetch the old rice from the back and give it to this child." "We'll listen to the boss," Madam replied with a smile. "How is this right? You're also trying to make a living here," Yang Kai said out loudly. The lady immediately frowned her face. "What use is old rice?" Leaving it there will only provide a place for insects to grow. Anyways, people won't eat it. But the owner said that this rice still has some nutrients, although less. You wait here, I will go get some for you take home. As she was saying this, she had already started walking towards the back room. Kai Yang's heart swelled, for he didn't know what to say. Every time he came to buy rice, the boss and his wife would always find various excuses to give him more. They say that insects will grow in old rice and the like, but in fact it was always good rice they gave him, not old rice. Their generosity gave Kai Yang hope in this sad world. Thank you, Uncle He. Yang Kai's voice had a slight trembling to it. The boss smiled and looked up. When living alone, don't you have household problems? In the future, whenever you're hungry, just come to our shop. We may not have much, but we still have enough rice for you to eat. Okay. Yang Kai nodded his head. This world still had good people around. Shortly, 2 enthusiastic people came to the rice store and kicked some people who were ready to order their meals from the line and away from the storefront. The second little brother fell, landed on his butt, and flipped over. It was a big problem because after he fell to the ground, he couldn't get up again. Why? Bossy called towards the people who had kicked the little brother as he ran out from behind the counter and towards the 2 men. Kai Yang quickly helped second little brother up whilst intently glaring at the 2 evil-faced men. One of the men, looked pale and thin, was clutching his stomach, while the other one was built like a bear, supported the pale one. These 2 were the ones who kicked the second brother. Who's the boss here? The man people shouted out. I am. Bossy quickly replied. He was only an ordinary merchant, yet the 2 men who called him out had such fierce-looking faces. The swords at their waist, and the fierce faces that showed they were not easily trifled with. Bossy wondered what had happened. Well, so you're the black-hearted boss. You even dared to sell poisonous rice to my brother. Look at him. Originally, he was a strong man, but after eating your rice, he became this sickly. Normally, he is as strong as a bear, but he can hardly stand now. You black-hearted person, worrying only about money and going as far as to take lives. At this outburst from the man, Bossy worriedly stammered out, how could this be? How could it? The man then said, how would I know? This morning my brother bought some rice from you and made rice porridge. Then he became like this after eating the rice he bought from you. I was lucky I didn't eat any, otherwise I also would have become like him. Bossy's forehead began to sweat. He took his sleeves and kept wiping his forehead and said, respected customer, I fear there might be a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Misunderstanding your mother. If it wasn't your rice, then what caused him to become like this? The Han man roared. TLN. Han people were a type of ethnic inside of China. Kai Yang sat down and pondered the situation while all eyes were on the commotion. Bossy is such a nice person. Kai Yang couldn't believe that this person who gave him rice would put poison in it. Not to mention the fact, boss, he couldn't possibly have a black heart in Kai Yang's mind. A black-hearted businessman wouldn't be so stupid as to poison his own rice. If these information spread, how would he do business in the future? Who would dare come and buy his rice? The 2 men's poor excuses were really unbearable, and they couldn't even consider that it was something else. Therefore, these 2 are definitely here to ruin others. But this move was a bit too evil, for they implied that the boss needed someone to die just to earn some money. Even though Kai Yang's body was weak, he was still a practitioner. And through these past years, he had seen countless types of people, so he felt he could accurately judge Boss He. The man was also someone who he owed greatly, and when Kai Yang witnessed this, it caused his face to fall. He stood up and said, these 2? What? One of the men threw him a glare, his anger evident. Kai Yang didn't speak, but Boss He immediately sprang in front of him. He slowly shook his head for Kai Yang to stop. Dear Boss He, you're too kind. Uncle He. Kai Yang was stunned. Even in bankruptcy, avoid misfortunes. Boss He whispered. Kai Yang just helplessly sighed. The fact that the boss said this signaled that he knew what the 2 Han men were on about. But in order to do business, one must have a good name. The earlier commotion had already attracted a lot of attention. If this continued, then the rice stand's reputation would go down the drain. Even if one knew what they said was false, one could only comply with them and hurriedly hope to end this fiasco before too much damage was done. In desperation, Bossy faced the man. "Regarding your brother's illness, I can say that it has nothing to do with me." After the two men heard this, one cried out in anger. "Even if it's not related, I have already come to this rice stand. If I don't make the truth clear, then my brother's suffering would be in vain. He should be sent to the doctor immediately. But of course, if you are willing to shoulder the medical bills, then we are willing to drop the subject." After this statement, it was clear that you really needed to go bankrupt to avoid misfortunes. If people really wanted to extort money, they would do it over a period of time. The demands that these two men were making were too short-sighted. If Bossy agreed to pay them off, now his rice stand's reputation would still suffer. For nothing is watertight, and news of him selling poison rice would spread. This told Kai Yang that the men were either not interested in extorting Bossy for more money, or that they had some other goal. Who would have imagined that these two Han men had not intention of compromising? You black-hearted boss. Who do you think we two brothers are, to be exploited by you so freely? We two brothers were really unlucky to have bought poison rice from you. Where is your guilty conscience? That statement resonated quite deeply with Kai Yang. He curled his lip while sitting, thinking, were they virtuous and living life a clear conscience? Bossy was also stupefied. What? Weren't these two men here to extort money? While stunned and unsure what to do, more and more people had started to gather. A handsome boy similar to Kai Yang's age had also appeared. From his looks, he was clearly far better off than Kai Yang. That young man casually walked up to the men and circled them with interest. Whilst doing so, he constantly clicked his tongue. Others may have not noticed, but with a glance Kai Yang recognized those three as the people he spotted earlier in the alley. The crowd just stared at the boy, who had just appeared. Weren't these three men together? Kai Yang sensed an evil plot in the air. Suddenly, the Sky Tower disciple walked out to the crowd and circled around. His expression slowly turned to one of mockery and arrogance. But the two Han men were not easily mocked and creased their faces. "You little brat, walking around in circles has made this uncle dizzy. Do you want to be the same?" The youngster just snickered. Standing in front of the two men, watching the poison man, he said, "Your face is very pale. Looks like your poisoning isn't simple." "Of course it's not," he viciously responded. "If it were not, why would I be here and with my brother, instead of at the doctor's? We're here to reveal this Boss Black heart and his true colors, hoping that no one will buy from his store again and suffer as we have." This made Bossy's face pale, for he didn't know what the aim of these two men was. If it were extorting money, then he would understand, but their motives were very puzzling and unclear. Just when he was pondering this, Kai Yang softly inquired, "Uncle He, did you offend anybody during this time?" Thinking hard, Bossy miserably wailed, "No one." "Then could it be that your rice shop prevented someone from earning money?" Even though Kai Yang was young, he had experienced many things. So this thought was not impossible. This is just a humble job to survive. How could I prevent others from their income? Now this was weird. Staring at the ground, Kai Yang thought hard, but was still confused. Then, the Sky Tower disciple sneered and asked the two men a question. They shouted out, "Look, trickery!" While shouting, the man resorted to a trick to open the black heart of the poisonous apple. TLN, saying for showing true colors. This surprised people around, for the morning had been quite sluggish. The Han man was wildly hopping about, while his fists were clenched. Jumping, he went to expose the poisonous truth. Moving like this, his once pale face became flushed and rosy. This caused the crowd to gasp. Clearly, they were shocked over this sudden change. Poisoned, looking at the two Han men, he sarcastically said, "Such skill. I respect them, respect." The two men couldn't help but pale. Not only did the fallen man not turn white, he also looked like he wasn't poisoned. The surrounding people also started to boo. They weren't stupid. How could they not be able to understand the situation? They didn't know what motives these men had, but to slander Boss He's rice stand was shameful. Luckily, that Sky Tower disciple had uncovered the truth. More and more people had started to despise the men and started to praise that young man. This young man was naturally easy to like, and with this incident, his reputation skyrocketed. while Kaiyang secretly confirmed his suspicions that they were all acting. They were acting out the play of an honorable knight, uncovering foul play and protecting the weak in order to gain reputation. If he hadn't seen them together earlier in the alley, he was afraid he would have also believed them. But why did they go to all that effort? The two Han men could no longer keep up the accusations. Staring fiercely at the young man, they asked, "Brat, who are you to interfere in my brother's issues?" Gracefully, he turned around and arrogantly replied, "I am Sky Tower's Su Mu." Hearing those words, one of the men became afraid. "No wonder you are a Sky Tower disciple. A dragon within here. Today these two brothers have admitted defeat. If fate allows it, I hope we will meet again." This sentence felt like it was planned beforehand, making Kaiyang laugh. Su Mu just laughed coldly. "Leave safely, for I won't escort you." With a situation like this, and if it were indeed no accident like Kaiyang suspected, then the two men would leave, and Su Mu would then seek out the audience's praise, especially Boss He's. But Kaiyang didn't want Boss He to be fooled. Before those two men left, he quickly said, "You can't let them go. They are too despicable." Today's victim was his rice stand, but if we don't teach them a lesson, they may target Lu Shi's clothes shop or Jiang Shi's grocery. Most of people who heard this couldn't help but notice that what he said was correct. How could they let these despicable villains leave so easily? If they let them go today, then tomorrow they might target another shop and leave them destroyed. If it came to that, then they may not be as lucky as Bossy. Thinking of this, the people started to block off the path in front of the two Han men. From his position, Kaiyang could clearly see the panic in Su Mu's eyes. This, in turn, leads Su Mu to source of the voice, to Kaiyang, while the two men exchanged glances and quickly readjusted their expressions. Chuckling, Kaiyang added, "Fellow disciple, there's a saying that goes, good people follow through to the end. Just like how Buddha went to the West. Why don't you and I both arrest these two criminals?" TLN, saying that he should finish his job. Also, the Buddha reference is to this. You guys should try it, Chinese folklore. Seeing Kaiyang's thin and fragile physique, Su Mu couldn't help but burst out in annoyance. "Who's your fellow disciple?" Kaiyang replied, "I am also a Sky Tower disciple. I entered the main gate 3 years ago." This made Su Mu speechless, for he really was a fellow disciple. Now, without further ado, Kaiyang came forward and said, "Throughout the land, it is important to be reasonable, while one must also be chivalrous. So, brother, you must not let only me take the benefit. Let both of us arrest these two cowardly men and help Bossy claim justice, while also helping Black Plum Village." With this statement, the surrounding people began to applaud. This filled Su Mu with anxiety, for he felt as if he was dragged upon a pirate's ship by this unknown brother. Even he wanted to escape, he couldn't. Those two men were also glancing continuously at Su Mu, looking for guidance/help/assistance. Looking at them, Su Mu couldn't do anything for them. "Brother, let's go." Pulling on Su Mu's shoulder, Kaiyang rushed over. "What is this?" Su Mu was in tears, wondering where did this brother come from. This really ruined my plans. But it had already come to this point, so Su Mu could only charge over. While he was preparing to capture them, he was also signaling for them to look for opportunity to escape. The two men nodded, but Kaiyang saw the exchange and guessed what they were doing. He was worried that Bossy would be tricked, so he took extra precaution and shouted, "Friends, fellow owners, don't just watch. Come help us too, brothers." Hearing this, Bossy also went to help. The rice stand's youngsters joined in, their hands carrying empty rag bags. Bossy was previously abused by these two men, so naturally they would want revenge. Seeing that Bossy had acted, the crowd couldn't just watch, and they all flocked towards the two men to capture them. Previously, the two men weren't worried, but as they saw this scene, their faces paled. So they quickly yelled, "Don't hit the face." While protecting their face, they curled up on the ground. Bang, 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 the sound of the beating rang out. Even though the businesses on this street were run by ordinary people, they currently displayed a powerful fighting spirit that left others flabbergasted. These merchants more or less did anything for money and were generally detested by others. And now, When they were given a chance to release their stress, how could they be lenient? This was especially true for He's Rice Stand's waiter. With rag bags in his hands, he relentlessly beat down on the men. Furthermore, with so many people hitting these men, they couldn't identify who was hitting them. So these people didn't have to worry about the consequences. There's strength in numbers. Kaiyang only asked for aid, but before he could lift a finger, he was pushed aside by these merchants. After a while, the beating gradually stopped, and you could see the two men curled on the ground, bruised all over. The rag bag had also disappeared. Looking at the men, Su Mu's heart cried out in pain, and his legs started to cramp. For the men were beaten bloody and their faces so swollen that even their mothers won't be able to recognize them. ED. No mercy on their faces. Crowd has the same attitude as you, so harsh. TL. Geez, just saying. This situation only occurred because the men didn't have enough strength to protect themselves. Although they had swords, one could see that it was only for decoration. If they could use them, would they suffer these attacks? Though on the other hand, how could experts stoop so low as to perform such despicable acts? Now, even though the beating was finished, the merchants remained. The two Han men with their horrendous faces and hearts full of fear weakly called Su, their hands trembling. Unfortunately, Su Mu's expression changed, and he loudly exclaimed, "What, Su, you want this young master to give you asterisk pasty bones?" TLN, asterisk because his name is Su, a play of words with his name's meaning. Seeing this, Kaiyang smiled and proclaimed, "You two scumbags. I don't know how many others you have framed, but it's extremely hateful." His words are an exaggeration, but for the merchants present, this seemed like the truth. That waiter who previously held a rag bag spat, "Hey, you trashes. You actually dared to act arrogantly at this rice stand." The waiter continued to let out his frustrations, but didn't expect Kaiyang to expand on his statement. "Correct. These types of people should really die. Fellow disciple, why don't you and I each kill one? That will teach them to break the law again and also be for the greater good." Hearing this remark, the two people on the floor started to break out in cold sweat and were terrified. They had never expected this frail boy to be so ruthless. Su Mu just stared at him, trying to figure out whether or not he was joking. But Kaiyang's face held no sign that it was a joke. To tell the truth, although what the men did was cowardly, it wasn't serious enough to die for. Undoubtedly, Kaiyang's punishment was a little too cruel. Su Mu could only ask, "Brother, isn't that a bit excessive?" "Right? Excessive." Kaiyang just shook his head. If their little lie were to succeed today, then Bossy's life would have been ruined. How would he maintain a livelihood? This is pushing people to the limits, so how is this excessive? You know, for every person, every action that they do will have a consequence. Previously, when those merchants heard Kaiyang's words, they had also thought this. But hearing his reasoning, they understood the sense behind his words and were conflicted. But the final decision wasn't up to them, so they just stood on the sidelines. But when Bossy wanted to say something, he was stopped by a look from Kaiyang. This may certainly be the case, but we can't just casually go killing people." Now Su Mu was really worried. He didn't think that this disciple in front of him was so ruthless and merciless. Originally, he had planned it out quite well. Firstly, those two men would go slander Boss He, and then he would go and stop them, saving Boss He. Then they would escape, and he would receive gratitude from the boss, thus accomplishing his goal. But he hadn't thought that such a vicious disciple would appear, so easily choosing to kill them. This was far from good. Su Mu could see that the two men were pleading him to save them. Within those gazes were signs of threats. How could Su Mu not understand their meaning? It was like being tied to the body of a grasshopper. If we're to suffer a tragic end, then you would not come out unharmed. That was their meaning. At that moment, Kaiyang said, "Brother, there is no other method. Through my experiences, killing is a natural thing. Could it be that you haven't killed before? Or you guys already know each other, so you're unwilling to kill?" This statement made Su Mu's heart jump to his throat. Turning around to look at Kaiyang, he found a mischievous smile. "Brother, what do you mean?" With a cool face he questioned, while thinking whether or not Kaiyang saw through him. He hadn't revealed any clues, so how could he know? What he didn't know was that Kai Yang knew of his plan purely by coincidence. If not, he would have also been fooled. Bossy was also smart. He understood the hidden meaning in Kai Yang's words and asked Sumu, "Little brother, what tune are you singing?" TLN, Chinese phrasing of "what are you up to" / planning. Kai Yang had revealed a portion of Sumu's true colors. How could Bossy not be able to see? Kai Yang just shook his head. He didn't point out anything in particular, but just continued to stare at Sumu. "Brother, I think that you are a courageous person, but you are hesitating. Don't worry. I am here to accompany you and the villagers too. So what are you afraid of?" "What am I afraid of?" Sumu laughed out loud, as if reassuring himself. He said, "What am I afraid of? Isn't it just killing a person? Who hasn't killed before?" It was like he was unwillingly to admit he hadn't killed before in front of Kai Yang. In the end, this person's disposition shocked him. Sumu hadn't stepped down from the challenge. Sumu then directed a cold, ruthless intent towards the men lying on the ground. Looking into that young man's eyes, those two men knew they were finished. This round, they were used too thoroughly. "Brother, let's do it." Kai Yang continued to pour oil on the flame. Breathing deeply, Sumu slowly nodded. Seeing this happen, the two men immediately knew their end was nigh. So how could they endure without doing anything? Jumping up, they pointed towards Sumu and proclaimed, "Sumu, you treacherous bastard. You asked us brothers for a favor, to slander Bossy's stand so that you could come to the rescue and become a hero. But how do you repay us? Not only are we beaten like pigs, now we have to die for your crimes. You really are trash. You lie." Hearing his scheme revealed, Sumu was furious. As if their injuries didn't affect them, the men just sneered, and the larger man shouted out loudly, informing all, "Everybody, young or old, today my brother and I came out and caused trouble for you." But this was all at the command of Sumu. He had taken fancy to Bossy's daughter, but sadly she rejected him. So he hatched a plan to obtain her. When this was revealed, something clicked inside the heads of the onlookers. Many people could not help but turn to look at Sumu with disbelief in their eyes. So that was it. Kai Yang was satisfied that he had guessed correctly. Sumu really had an ulterior motive, though he had thought it was something related to profit or reputation. He hadn't thought it was actually for his own sexual desires. He had also met the boss daughter. Even though she wasn't outrageously beautiful, she was still a work of art. Alluring body, delicate features, slim figure, and the most beautiful girl in the entire village at only 14. Such a young girl, unfortunately, had caught Sumu's eye, provoking such trouble. What utter rubbish! Sumu's face was as red as a tomato, trying to deny the truth. Sneering, the man continued to say, "I have said no lies. Even though us two brothers have our faults and do some criminal acts, slandering boss he and poisoning his rice, this we would never do. Fellow people, you should know that sabotaging others' livelihoods is equal to sabotaging my own. So how can I survive? Everything was instigated by this little brat." This statement was very sincere, causing everybody to start laughing. In a timely manner, Kai Yang asked, after this was over, how much did he promise to give? 52 silvers. The man replied, 52, that's a lot. Kai Yang softly said while nodding. During this banter, Bossy was listening carefully. This made him understand the situation thoroughly. Turning towards Sumu, he angrily said, "You despicable person. You actually dared to use such dirty methods to get my daughter. Thankfully, she has eyes and saw your true face. Ah, how could Sky Tower have such a degenerate disciple? You are ruining your school's good name. You are vain and selfish, with a character completely opposite to Brother Yang. I feel ashamed for your mother and father." Surrounding merchants also started to feel more contempt towards Sumu's outrageous acts. Sumu's face was bright red, for he knew that he could no longer come back to Black Plum Village. For his mask had been taken away and his true face revealed, and the source of all his misfortunes was in front of him. This disciple, if not for him, he would have been able to win the boss' favor and further his reputation. That would have made it easier to curry the daughter's love for him. But all that planning had gone to waste. Not only had he failed to gain any reputation, He had also lost reputation he had previously for being a disciple of Sky Tower. Under that situation, Sumu put on a calm face and turned towards Kai Yang and asked, "Brother, how may I call you?" "You guess." Kai Yang replied with a wink. Taking a deep breath, Sumu said, "Though you may choose to withhold your identity, I will able to find out. For you have already entered the school for 3 years, yet you are not an official disciple. That means you are a trial disciple, and within the entire school, there are only a few of you. Finding you will be simple." When he finished, he immediately turned around and left. In the end, he did have some strength. For those who blocked his path, he pushed them to the side, waltzing away unhindered. When he had left, the people had only just remembered the 2 Han men. But where were they? There was no trace, for when Kai Yang and Su Mu were arguing, they had sneakily ran away. The debacle had finally been resolved. Kai Yang was satisfied, for he had exposed the deceit, gained approval from the merchants, and boss, he was especially grateful to him. That waiter also looked at Kai Yang in worship. After the crowd dispersed, the boss wife also came out, taking Kai Yang's hand. The more she looked, the more she came to like him. On the contrary, Boss Easy was full of worry. "Virtuous nephew Yang, today you have offended Sumu. I'm afraid that in the future, this will cause you ceaseless trouble." After this incident, Bossy started to refer to Kai Yang more intimately. "Afraid?" Kai Yang just smiled. "The main gate has its own rules, so even if he hates me to death, he can't do anything. Even so, you must be careful, nephew. If because of your involvement in this matter you were to suffer misfortune, then I as your uncle would worry greatly. I will be careful." He consoled. Kai Yang was immensely grateful to the He couple for extending a helping hand. They even insisted he stay for dinner. Originally, Kai Yang wanted to, but was scared away by the boss wife. "Little Yang, where are you parents? Where do you live? Have you married already?" Looking at this, clearly the boss wife wanted to become his mother-in-law. Knowing this, Kai Yang hurriedly left. When he left, he was carrying a bag of white rice, but it far surpassed the amount 20 silvers could get you. So for an entire month, Kai Yang didn't have to worry about his meals. Originally, Kai Yang was worried that Su Mu would ambush him on his way back. For as innocent as Su Mu looked, he was a sinister and treacherous snake on the inside. This was not impossible. Though, even when Kai Yang returned, Su Mu hadn't appeared. He thought about it carefully. Not attacking was the correct choice. Even though duels between disciples often resulted in death, the main gate didn't allow the needless killing of others. In short, if Su Mu had attacked on his way back to the school, then when things leaked out, it would have resulted in his own doom too. If he wanted to deal with Kai Yang, then he would definitely come and challenge him, while making a fuss too. As for the matter of Kai Yang's identity, there is no doubt that he would be able to find it. In the Sky Tower, as long as Su Mu inquired a bit, then naturally he would find his identity. Su Mu's true strength, Kai Yang didn't fully see, but he most definitely was at the peak of the tempered body. The only thing was he didn't know what stage exactly. Seems like he must focus more on his practices. Otherwise, Kai Yang truly couldn't continue staying at Sky Tower. Knowing this, Kai Yang swiftly returned back to his hut to practice. At this hour, he was unable to practice the tempered body record, but he could practice the basic skills that the school gave. These basic skills were to establish the foundations for the tempered body, to achieve spiritual consumption beyond his own body. This was the aim. TLN. It's talking about things like Qi/Ki/spiritual energy. Kai Yang's previous usage of Shaolin arts and the leg whip were all based around his foundation work. If not for this, then the skills couldn't be considered true martial arts. They would only be considered as the basic of basic skills, essential for all schools and families. To the left of Kai Yang's hut, there a wooden figure. This was made from a century-old tree by Kai Yang to practice on. Small dents were littered over it. There were even traces of blood. These were all made through Kai Yang's many days of diligent training. Assuming his position, Kai Yang started to hit the wooden man. He infused all his might into each strike, beating the wooden man relentlessly. Pung! Pung rang out as he struck the wooden man. However, after a few strikes, he felt that something was amiss. It was his own fists and leg, so he clearly felt that they were stronger than before. From the strike and the sound it made, all of them were stronger and more stable, incomparable to before. And over time, his hand and the bones started to feel numb and warm. This clearly indicated that he was stimulating his meridians, increasing his atmospheric affinity. Reaching the tempered body fourth stage gives birth to the atmospheric affinity, developing your meridians further and allowing you to sense the energy more clearly. This warm feeling was Kai Yang's meridians developing. Kai Yang practiced until the sun set. Only then did he stop. Even after this period of time, not only was he not fatigued, he even felt more alive. Ever since he merged with that golden skeleton, his strength seemed to skyrocket. Walking 20 miles today didn't even tire him out. Even with the added weight of the sack of rice, he hadn't become fatigued. It was only when he was cultivating his tempered body that he would truly feel pressured. Thinking about that morning's practice, Kai Yang couldn't help but shudder. That pressure was like the heaven and earth were crushing him, horrifying. But with strain/pressure come development. Without extreme pressure, how could you possibly advance? Only then would a person's true potential show. And only then would your strength grow, step by step, each time breaking past your limits. Though currently, even after throwing large amounts of punches and kicks out, Kai Yang has yet to feel any fatigue. He doesn't feel strained. How can he force out his potential and improve? This made things difficult and made him depressed. That skeleton also gave him extreme recovery, making the basic skills of the school useless. Did that mean that he could only practice for half an hour each day at sunrise? Daylight had around 12 full hours, and yet he could only practice for half an hour. What would he do the rest of the time? Sleep? This was obviously impossible. Kai Yang immediately rejected the idea. TL, while getting stronger by only practicing 30 minutes each day while sleeping the rest? Lucky. ED. So glad he's not following in the footsteps of Contribution Hall Uncle. While he absent-mindedly cooked, Kai Yang thought about how he should train to exhaustion. If anyone else knew of this, they would have laughed to death. Other practitioners may have wanted to take it easier, but Kai Yang wanted to push himself to the limit. In the end, he still couldn't think of any good methods. Though the main reason was Kai Yang needed elixirs to help boost his training. There were also other methods, but in the end, all of these had one thing in common. They required money. In Sky Tower, contribution points were the currency. Alas, Kai Yang was poor and only had a measly 12 points. After the rice finished cooking, he wolfed down a few bowls. Although there were no sides dishes, and he could only eat plain rice, Kai Yang was very satisfied. That was the only meal in the past few days, which made him full. After dinner, he couldn't go train, so he went to take a bath. After that, he lay down and went to bed. Continuing his practice, there would be no result, so he might as well try to solve that problem. Consider the solutions to hasten the work speed. After thinking for a while, he suddenly remembered the black book. One of the pages had something inside, so Kai Yang figured that the other pages would be the same. So if he had enough strength, he could unseal each page. The first page contained the golden skeleton, which was also the cause of his current predicament, while the second dealt with the methods to cultivate the tempered body with golden skeleton. However, the third page remained blank. He had already tried to decipher it, but Kai Yang concluded he wasn't strong enough yet. With the first and second pages unlocked, Kai Yang could start to study them. But after a good half day, he still couldn't figure them out, until he accidentally turned to the third page and went into a trance. Kai Yang frowned as he started to read the third page. Almost instantly, countless gold words started to appear on the page and jumped into his mind. Then a small whirlpool started to appear in the center of the page. From it arose an antique incense burner. This turn of events left Kai Yang in shock, but quickly he started to rejoice. All right, didn't he break through into the fourth stage this morning? Last night he was still in the third stage, but today he's in the fourth. So that's why he couldn't access the third page before. Although it was only one level, it had still hindered his ability to comprehend the third page. After he thought about this, Kai Yang couldn't help but feel regret. If this morning he had discovered this, then he wouldn't need to waste time now thinking about it. Calming his beating heart, Kai Yang held the incense burner and carefully inspected it. This burner wasn't large in size and was a common item used by people, but it was half-sealed with a lid on the mouth and a few holes. It was also antique and of outstanding quality, but it wasn't attention-grabbing at all. Gently he sniffed, but there was no odor, and slowly he lowered it. What is it made of? Even after a while, Kai Yang still didn't know, but could only go on the information imprinted in his mind. After a short pause, Kai Yang opened his eyes with a strange look in them. According to the information in his mind, this incense burner could aid him during training. The burner itself has no special properties. However, if you were to gather herbs and burn them in it, the fragrance released would aid you during training. Different herbs were needed for different stages. Unfortunately, Kai Yang had some doubts. The plants needed to aid him at his current level were the 3-leaf destruction/chaos spirit flower and the dead Jedi tree grass. According to his understanding, the value of these two herbs were not high, but they were very hard to find. They also possessed small amounts of toxins. Inhaled over a short period of time, these toxins would do no lasting damage, but over many years the accumulation in your body would really injure you. Would these two herbs really be effective in helping him? These herbs were definitely available in the contribution hall, but with Old Man Meng's personality, he would definitely charge high prices for them. And with only a few points in his possession, how could he spend them like that? There was only one option left. He would have to venture into the Black Wind Mountains to look for them himself. Kai Yang had already hunted in there before, so was quite familiar with its geography, and perhaps the herbs were there. Tomorrow, into the mountains, he shall go. With his problems currently solved, Kai Yang slowly drifted asleep. But before he fell asleep, he checked the 4th page so as to not repeat this morning's embarrassing action. Unfortunately, nothing appeared. It seemed that tempered body 4th stage was not sufficient for this page. The next morning, Kai Yang got up early. Yesterday's practice had already had such a large impact on his cultivation, so naturally he would make full use of the short time he had to cultivate. Not to mention, he was not a lazy person. While immersing himself in the purple eastern air/gas, that slow but with the might of heaven and earth infused, tempered body record fists might gradually unfold it. While he was a stage stronger than yesterday, Kai Yang still didn't make much progress on the fist. You could only perform it 20 times, and when he touched his back, torturous pain responded. His back, hip, and bones all ached. They felt like smashed beans. Inhaling a mouthful of purple gas, his bodily senses as energy became clearer. His meridians all opened up and began to expel the impurities in his body. With his daily training finished, he started his sweeping, which since absorbing the golden skeleton he had been able to complete in only 1 hour. After he finished sweeping, he ran to the contribution hall. Although Kai Yang had decided to go into the mountains to find the herbs, he had no knowledge regarding herbology. He had only heard of the 3-leaf chaos spirit flower and the dead Jedi tree grass, and didn't know what they looked like. Most of his preparatory work for his journey into the Black Wind Mountain was done. To avoid an embarrassing situation, Kai Yang hurried to the contribution hall to write down the herb's appearance. Originally, he had planned to ask Treasurer Meng to teach him. He hadn't expected Treasurer Meng to give him a book on herbs instead. Looking at the book, Kai Yang found that it had an introduction to herbs and their medical properties, habitats, and illustrations. Though it would create a feeling of disappointment in those who read it, as it merely contained information on ordinary grade herbs and nothing on the herbs of a higher grade. But it was quite suitable for Kai Yang's current needs. Just as practitioners were classified into different ranks, so too were herbs, weapons, and medicinal pellets. They were divided into ordinary grade, earth grade, heaven grade, mystery grade, spirit grade, and saint grade. Each of the grades were then divided into the lower, middle, and peak level. Luckily, the herbs that Kai Yang needed were both ordinary grade, lower class herbs, so they were in the book. And since they were such a low grade, their value wasn't high. After he left the contribution hall, Kai Yang went to the General Affairs office. After all, he was still a sweeper of sky towers, and this roundabout journey to Black Wind Mountain would take more than a day. So he had to ask to be excused from his work. The General Affairs office didn't make things difficult for him. They gave Kai Yang 3 days of leave. With his obligations taken care of, he set off. Blackwind Mountain was only 20 miles away from Sky Tower by foot. Since it wasn't that far, Kai Yang frequently went there to hunt for his meals, making him quite familiar with the terrain. In this mountain was a vast and diverse range of herbs. But since it was his first time collecting herbs, Kai Yang made sure to be fully prepared. Carrying his water, food supplies, a shovel, and a bag, he hit the road. Rushing over, Kai Yang came to Blackwind Mountain and surveyed the area. The mountain was like a prehistoric monster, lying down between the heavens and the earth. Imposing, with no end in sight, the mountain with its lush forests, jagged edges proudly stood against the horizon. Standing there, Kai Yang felt a cool breeze blow through his hair. Within Blackwind Mountain lived many ferocious beasts. Some high-leveled ferocious beasts could even make martial practitioners flee with no chance of victory. So, generally when people ventured into the mountain, they wouldn't go too deep. The first 30 or so miles were classified as the safe zone. The next 10 miles were the danger zone. And the area beyond that was the life-threatening zone. Basically, the deeper you went, the more dangerous it was. Since Kai Yang was only looking for ordinary grade lower-level herbs, he didn't need to venture too far in. So naturally, he didn't have to worry about his safety, as he would only be searching within the safe zone. Currently, it was still in the early hours of the morning, and Kai Yang was trying to recall whether or not he had stumbled upon those herbs in his previous trips to the mountain. But it didn't matter whether he had or not, as he was prepared this time to find them equipped with the knowledge from the book. Thinking back, Kai Yang remembered that there were many potential places for herbs to grow in. In his current situation, he didn't even know the locations of the herbs he wanted to find. But filled with anticipation, Kai Yang followed the familiar track into Blackwind Mountain. After half an hour, Kai Yang spotted his first harvest hidden within the thicket next to the track. He was a bunch of cheese/sharp teeth herbs. Harvesting them, Kai Yang put them into his bag and continued his search, thinking to himself this was a good start. Walking down the road, Kai Yang looked at the various vegetation scattered about, and memories of the forest came flooding back, informing him of his location. With his knowledge of the mountain, gained from hunting, he could accurately create a mental map of where he was in relation to Sky Tower, preventing him from getting lost. By evening, Kai Yang had collected 4 different types of herbs. Within the Tower Disciples' internal struggles, every year there are many who die. Zhou Dingjun, seeing this unflinching and courageous brother, couldn't help but feel a bit alarmed. When he thought that, Zhou Dingjun knew he couldn't reach such a degree and was afraid that he would have to surrender. Keep your cool, well then you will not be afraid to be burned. This is the way of life, to stubbornly follow your decision. This is perseverance. Despite Kai Yang's sorry figure, his eyes were becoming more and more powerful. Zhou Dingjun knew that if he didn't settle things now, then there will be no end. Thinking of this, Zhou Dingjun rushed forward to execute a palm knife to Kai Yang's neck bone. Kai Yang, with an imposing manner, swiftly escaped. Then his eyes clouded, and he fell limply to the ground. Seeing this scene, tens of feet higher, a disciple who was sitting on a tree branch took out a small book. Flipping the page, she wrote, "Trial Disciple Kai Yang versus Ordinary Disciple Zhou Dingjun. Zhou Dingjun wins. TLN. Experimental Disciple will now become Trial Disciple." The person who was on the tree branch had a graceful figure. It obviously was a woman. It was just that black mask on her face didn't allow people to see her face. But those delicate eyebrows proved that this person was not old. The armband on her arm also indicated her identity, a Sky Tower Dark Hall disciple. Sky Tower's Dark Hall is a special sector. The school's 3 main elders were responsible for governing, and the hall disciples were responsible to recording down all affairs of the school. No matter how big or small, all matters are recorded. This also included the results of duels between disciples. So for all battles within the school, you do not have to worry about not being able to prove your wins and earning contribution points. For in the shadows, Dark Hall disciples will record them down for you and summarize your monthly records. This woman, after recording the outcome for this duel, took out another smaller book from her waist and opened up at May 7th century, 14 years Kai Yang's 147th defeat. Even if you remove this, above are numerous records of Kai Yang's battles. From the first battle to the most recent, all had one word: defeat. 147 battles in a row, he had lost every single one of them. This simply could be said that since the school's history, it was a unique record and was enough to be awe-inspiring. Though the owner of this record was lying on the ground, not knowing if they were dead or alive, Kai Yang had never challenged others, so these 147 losses were from others challenging him. So to say, from being challenged once every 5 days, this had lasted for 2 years. Looking at Kai Yang on the ground, she wrinkled her eyebrows. She didn't understand how Yang Kai could endure to this state. He had already become the tower's trial disciple. Even his very survival was endangered. So why did he still linger? If he had left, then his life will certainly be better. This thin boy, what kind of dedication did he have? Even with 147 straight losses, he remains undaunted. Perhaps this is a man's folly? Taking notice of Kai Yang was also a moment's coincidence. When Xiaoning Chang became a Dark Hall disciple, she was placed in charge of monitoring this area. Yang Kai was challenged every time, not once, not twice, and every single time she saw him being beaten to near death. Xiaoning Chang began to pay attention to this tempered body third-stage youth. She was really curious. With his strength, how long could he endure before finally leaving Sky Tower? This type of talent, this type of training speed, he really was not fit to remain here. The ordinary world is his place. The people below had already long scattered. Only Kai Yang was still there on the ground. Coming and going, time passed by. Xiaoning Chang disappeared from the branch in a flash. When Kai Yang woke up, it was already 3 o'clock. There was nowhere on his body that didn't hurt. Staggering, he stood up and looked up, only to be surprised. For the place in which he woke up from was under the shade of a tree and not where he fainted. This was really surprising. Was there a fellow disciple that was kind enough to carry him over? This had never happened before, causing Kai Yang to furrow his brows. He could vaguely remember there was a shadowy figure darting in front of him, but memory was too vague. Thinking harder just made it more unclear. But between his current position and the place he fainted, there was very distinct drag marks, clearly showing that he had been dragged over. Once again, he felt his back, immediately flaring hot pain spread out. Kai Yang froze for a moment, becoming furious. The trace of goodwill he felt towards his benefactor had quickly disappeared. That person directly dragged him over, otherwise how could his back bled like this? He might as just have left him there on the ground. Kai Yang thought to himself. Being depressed, Kai Yang realized that in his right hand he was clutching something. Looking down in doubt, he was surprised to find a small, fine work of porcelain in his hand. What is this? This was definitely not his, for the only things that Kai Yang owned were the clothes on his back and his broom. How could he have this? The small porcelain bottle had a label. Yang Kao read out, blood clotting cream. Blood clotting cream. Kai Yang knew of this. This was the school's cream to help heal wounds. Although it was ordinary, its effects were very good. Generally, disciples will carry one bottle around for emergency uses. This one bottle of cream in Sky Tower logistics was very expensive. 10 points of contribution was the bottle's cost. How much contribution points can Kai Yang earn for sweeping for a month? He can only earn 10 points. In other words, this one bottle's worth was equal to 1 month of work for him. Who was it? At this moment, the resentment Kai Yang had towards this person was reduced greatly. But as he moved, the pain flared up again. He had already come to this tower for 3 years. 3 years. Within this time, Yang Kai had already gotten used to the lack of compassion between disciples. But today, for this person to leave behind a bottle of blood clotting cream for him greatly touched Yang Kai's hearts. The discovery that he was near a breakthrough left Kai Yang ecstatic. For it took him 3 years to make it to the tempered body third stage. But on the second day of obtaining this book, he had broken through, and now, once again, he will break through again. This training speed also made Kai Yang somewhat scared. Practicing the tempered body record consumed a large amount of stamina. So Kai Yang rested afterwards and slowly regained his stamina. After he had regained his stamina, he ate some of the remaining food and continued his search for the herbs. Yesterday, he had traveled to all the places from his memory that could potentially grow his required herbs. Today, he would have to rely on luck. Fortunately, the value of these herbs were not high, so the chance of finding them today was still high. TL, trust me, Kai Yang, luck is the only thing you don't need to worry about. After an entire day of searching, Kai Yang had found a total of 78 herbs and 2 3-leaf chaos spirit flowers. This time he had finally found the herbs he required to activate the incense burner, but the quantity he had was still lacking. Time passed by, and soon darkness came. Kai Yang was still awake, though. It was not because he wasn't tired, but rather that he was too hungry to fall asleep. And surprise face. Originally, he had planned to hunt some wild game, but had not even seen a single rabbit. Unfortunately, he could only find some fingernail-sized berries, which were very sour. When he finished eating them, it only made him feel even more hungry. If I knew that this was going to happen, I would have brought more rice balls. Kai Yang repented. There is no shop in these desolate areas. Where is he going to find food? This hunger was a real embarrassment. Kai Yang then saw in the distance a hint of a fire. Instantly, his energy came back. Picking himself up, he walked towards it. They dared to light a fire in a forest. These people were either idiots or they had nothing to fear. This time, these people belonged to the latter. When he approached, a person near the fire thundered, "Who?" TL and ED. T to the power of T. Kai Yang, you're finally going to make some friends. At that moment, Kai Yang felt his muscles tighten and his spine shiver. The two people by the fire were vigilant. One was tall and the other was short. One had a burly physique and held a bow with an arrow notched. He pointed the arrow at Kai Yang. The other was a young boy, aged about 11, and his eyes were bright and held no trace of fear. In this boy's hand was also a bow, and he also had notched an arrow back, but it was much smaller. TL, maybe not. ED, how can you doubt our MC? Have some faith. Although Kai Yang was faced with the two arrows, he didn't have the slightest intention to retaliate. Walking around, he acted as if their threats were nothing big. Take it easy. I only entered the mountain to collect herbs, Kai Yang quickly said. After they heard this, the two people looked at each other. The burly, I really want to say buff, slowly lowered his bow and arrow down. He then signaled for the boy to relax and laughed. I had thought that the fire had attracted a wild beast, but it was just a false alarm. Sorry, I'm sorry, Kai said, slightly embarrassed, and laughed. Touching his forehead, the burly man waved towards Kai Yang. Come, the nights are cold, and surviving alone here will not be easy. When he heard this, Kai Yang walked up and sat next to the fire. Beside him, the burly man kept looking at Kai Yang and couldn't but feel pity when he saw Kai Yang's thin, bony body. Now that they were sitting together, it would be natural to talk to each other. From this chat, Kai Yang learned that this father and son pair lived at the foot of the mountain and came here to hunt and earn a living. Although they weren't rich, it was enough to maintain adequate food and clothing. The boy, although he was young, was a veteran at hunting, and along with his father, they had come to Black Wind Mountains many times to hunt. Thus, their knowledge of the mountain was far greater than Kai Yang's. Kai Yang also told them a bit about himself. After he told them that he was a Sky Tower disciple, the burly man was taken aback, while the little boy became more interested in Kai Yang and kept on glancing at him with his glossy, black eyes. The Han man said, "My son also wanted to train to become a practitioner, but his talent was not enough and he was refused. So he practically worships you people." This statement made Kai Yang recall the past 3 years and his experiences. Not only did it move him deeply, it also made him softly rub the boy's head with affection. When he was about to say something, Kai Yang's stomach grumbled loudly. The little boy stared blankly and suddenly laughed out loud. From his bag, he took out some dry rations and gave it Kai Yang. This once again made him very moved, but he didn't accept. Kai Yang looked at the burly man and he smiled. "Eat it. It seems that you did not eat anything today." This time Kai Yang didn't reject the offering and quickly wolfed down the rations. After chatting some more, the three then went to sleep around the fire. Though Kai Yang didn't dare sleep too heavily, if any danger were to approach the father and son, he would be able to react. He also considered this to be returning the favor for giving him the rations previously. Fortunately, the night passed peacefully and nothing happened. When the morning arrived, Kai Yang didn't wait for the father and son to wake before quietly leaving. But before he left 2 herbs behind as a thank you for last night. If these 2 herbs were crumpled, they had a healing effect. Since they were constantly in the mountains, these herbs were bound to be useful to the father and son pair. With the eastern purple gas increasing in volume, Kai Yang trained the tempered body record for half an hour. When he finished his practice, Kai Yang took in a large breath of the purple gas, causing his meridians to suddenly shake. A warm feeling then began surging through his body, with the energy in his meridians swirling endlessly. The tempered body 5th stage. His intuition was correct. He indeed broke through today. After practicing for half an hour, he really broke through to the next stage. Kai Yang was extremely happy and felt more and more grateful towards the golden skeleton in his body. Although it had not been very long since he obtained the proud golden skeleton, he had broken through twice thanks to it and the tempered body record. This speed was simply unmatched, and this was practicing under quite a number of restrictions. If he could practice all the time, what speed would he reach then? This thought left Kai Yang somewhat speechless. Though after all, the tempered body was only the foundation to becoming a true warrior. Training the early stages were easier. The higher the realms, the greater the difficulty to train in. After a quick rest, Kai Yang continued to search for herbs. Today he had yet again gained quite a harvest. He had collected more than a dozen herbs and caught a plump rabbit, solving his food problems. This was already the 3rd day of his mountain journey, and he had reached the end of the 10-mile safety zone. Any further, and Kai Yang dared not to enter inside, for with his current strength, his only option was to become food for the beasts within. Although he did not go too deep, his harvest was still quite good. He had collected more than 20 different types of herbs, and, counting the previous 2 days, he had 40 different types, making his journey here very fruitful. Unfortunately, the 2 main herbs that he needed were very small in quantity. To find 40 different types of herbs in 3 days was no small harvest. Even if they were all ordinary grade, lower rank herbs, he was still able to exchange them for a fair amount of contribution points. But this greatly reduced his training time, doing more harm than good. It was now the afternoon, and Kai Yang had started to walk towards the track that would lead him back to Sky Tower. Kai Yang was only given 3 days of leave, so he had to return before tomorrow morning, otherwise there would be harsh punishment waiting for him. Kai Yang felt he had plenty of time and was certain that he could return before dark. After all, he was only 100 miles away, not a long distance. In his heart, he held great anticipation with regard to the Black Book's 3rd page. Thinking about the results it would bring for him made him delighted and put a bounce in his steps. Halfway through his journey back, Kai Yang heard an unexpected, piercing cry not too far from his position. There was the sound of a child screaming/crying mixed in. When he heard this, he paused his footsteps and strained his ears. Soon after, his face changed, and Kai Yang swiftly ran towards the direction of the sound. When he was listening to the sound, he recognized it as the sounds of the father and son pair from the night before. And that child's crying sound was from the little boy. Those 2 probably had encountered some sort of trouble, or why would they make such a ruckus? Last night, they had given Kai Yang some of their rations, and even if it were for their past kindness, how could he just ignore their trouble? As he ran towards them, the father's roaring became increasingly desperate, and the boys grew softer and softer. Kai Yang's face gradually hardened, and he started to have a bad feeling. By the time Kai Yang arrived, the father's roar could no longer be heard, and he only saw a dark cave and high hill. To the side of the cave, in the midst of some bushes, tangled between some spider webs, was a silver bow. This bow, the same one the little boy had been holding the previous night. Without thinking, Kai Yang threw his possessions onto the ground, heightened his senses, and plunged straight into that dark and sinister cave. Although the light inside the cave was not bright, it was still enough to see. When he looked around, Kai Yang was shocked to discover that the cave was covered in webs. On the walls and the ground, they crisscrossed each other and varied in thicknesses. layer upon layer. The road ahead was blocked by the multitude of webs. Not only that, the cave was damp. The water dripped down at a steady pace, and when Kai Yong took a step forward, his foot sank into the ground. Steeling his nerves, Kai Yong walked to the sound of deep breathing. Only he saw a large human-sized cocoon spun from a spider's thread in a chrysalis-like state. At the top, it revealed a human face. That face belonged to the burly man from the night before. Worriedly, Kai Yong dashed over to the trapped hunter. His worry eased upon discovering that he was only unconscious. Hearing Kai Yong calling to him, the hunter groggily awoke and called feebly, "Save the child. My son was dragged further inside. I beg of you, please save my child." Got dragged inside? This shocked Kai Yong as he struggled to free the hunter from the web. Sadly, the web was too strong for his current strength. Being unable to break it, he could only temporarily give up. Diving into the hole, he chased after the little boy. From behind, the hunter warned, "Be careful. That is a demonic spider beast." When he heard the words, demonic spider beast, Kai Yang's heart thumped loudly. These demonic beasts were not like ordinary wild animals. They loved to slaughter. They were true ferocious beasts, and Kai Yong was not a match for even the lowest among them with his current strength. In the Black Wind Mountains, the reason why the first 30 miles were deemed a safe zone was precisely because there were no ferocious beasts. Unfortunately, it seemed, one had appeared. This was seriously outside one's expectations. Now that he knew it was a ferocious beast, Kai Yong's movements became more and more cautious and soft. Slowly, he groped his way through the tunnel, and after about 10 feet, he spotted the little boy. The son was in a similar situation to his father, wrapped up in a cocoon which was suspended in mid-air by a larger spiderweb. At the side of the little boy, there was an enormously large flower-patterned spider sucking on a straw. The straw was inserted in the little boy's arm, and you could clearly see the dark red blood streaming out from the straw and into the spider's mouth. On the ground of this hillside cave were various bones of all different types of beasts piled up like mountains. One could only imagine the amount of time the demonic spider beast had spent living here and the number of poor souls, humans and animals alike, that had fallen prey to it. Kai Yong had no time to spare to think about this spider's capabilities and form an appropriate plan. Every second he delayed increased the chances of this little boy ascending straight to heaven. After a moment's silence, he suddenly charged forward. The enormously large, flower-patterned spider did not expect to be disturbed at that moment. Shortly after Kai Yong charged forward, a large amount of force was applied to the side of the demonic spider, and a large hole was torn in the web. The flower-patterned spider fell alongside Kai Yong. The little boy also fell through the hole and onto the ground. Being attacked so suddenly caused the flower-patterned spider to be furious. Its 8 long, hairy legs stamped the ground, and all of its eyes focused on Kai Yong. Before he even had a time to get up, he was pinned down by a single pounce from the flower-patterned spider. Kai Yong snarled. A steel fist flew out and landed squarely on the throat of the spider. This momentarily stunned it. Kai Yong took the opportunity to kick the spider, sending it flying away. With a single roll, Kai Yong got to his feet and crouched down, his eyes fully focused on the movements of that flower-patterned spider. After that small confrontation, Kai Yang's furiously beating heart had calmed slightly. For that demonic beast's rank was not that high. Otherwise, he would even be able to struggle against it. It's most likely that it's only a first-realm demonic beast. However, even if it was only a first-realm demonic beast, given Kai Yang's current strength, it was still a difficult opponent. As both sides were sizing up their opponents, the flowered-patterned spider started to show signs of impatience. And it wasn't just him. Kai Yong began to exhibit them as well. It seemed that the little boy had lost too much blood and was showing signs of poisoning. If the current situation could not be resolved quickly, then there would be no time to save him. Abruptly, the flower-patterned spider opened its mouth to spit out a long, gem silk thread. It spat the thread towards Kai Yong, signaling the start of its attack. Previously, Kai Yong had learned about this thread's durability, so naturally he was wary to not be trapped by it. At once, he He rolled to the side and narrowly dodged the attack. The flower-patterned spider didn't show much reaction to his dodge and continued to spit out other thread pieces. By the time Kai Yang noticed the spider wasn't aiming at him, it was already too late. The entire cave had been covered by a web of these threads, sealing off his exits and trapping him inside. Is it forcing me to fight to the death? Kai Yang laughed at that thought. Any fear he had previously harbored was quickly expelled by the arrogance seeping out from his bones, pumping adrenaline through his body. With the current situation, if he didn't kill the spider, he would not be able to leave. Since it had come to that, he could only fight to the bitter end. Either you die or I die. With time ticking, Kai Yang could not afford a delay. Firmly planting both feet on the ground, he sprinted towards the flower-patterned spider. Out flew another strand of thread. Fortunately, Kai Yang was on guard, so how could he not avoid it? After dodging 3 of these threads in succession, he had finally closed the distance between them. But before he could throw out a punch, that flower-patterned spider raised its front 2 legs and drove them towards him. Kai Yang could only lift up his arm to block. The spider's forelimbs pierced through his arm. Kai Yang roared out in pain, his blood boiled out. Not only was he not in a fearful panic, instead he had an indescribable feeling of excitement and anticipation in his heart. All of his bones clanking together caused a warm feeling pass through his entire body. Throwing out a punch, Kai Yang's fist whistled through the air and smashed into the eyes on the left-hand side of the flower-patterned spider's head. The moment his fist hit, it pulverized 2 eyes. The flower-patterned spider was horrified. Even with its limited intellectual capacity, it knew to fear that human with blood dripping from their arm. When it went to retract its 2 legs that were lodged in Kai Yang's arms, the spider found that the arm muscles had tightened around its forelimbs, so the spider couldn't pull them out. Kai Yang's second punch followed shortly after his first, pulverizing another 2 eyes. The flower-patterned spider screeched out in pain, incessantly trying to retreat, but its hind legs could only scratch at the ground. In desperation, it lashed out at Kai Yang, leaving many shallow wounds on his arms. Although they weren't deep, they still drew blood. But the pain only served to increase Kai Yang's excitement. His whole body bubbled with overflowing strength. The corners of his mouth curved into a cold and merciless smile. His fists flew endlessly towards the spider's forehead. Under the unceasing barrage of attacks, the flower-patterned spider's forehead cracked open, and its bodily fluids oozed out. A dismal whimper escaped from its mouth. The flower pattern did not wish to sit and wait for its death. From its mouth, it spat out streams of its web, and at such close proximity, the web wrapped Kai Yang up. However, at that moment, the flower-patterned spider was in a horrible state. Its head was disfigured so much that it had nearly burst. If it hadn't become a demonic beast and gained the tenacious vitality that is associated with it, it would have already died many times over. Since this was the case, even though it had trapped him with its web, under Kai Yang's relentless fists, it soon ceased all signs of struggling. Kai Yang would have never imagined he could win a fight with a demonic beast. Furthermore, not only had he survived, he had also killed it. Even though it was a first-realm demonic beast, it was still not something a cultivator at the Tempered Body 5th stage should be able to defeat. Although Kai Yang's wounds weren't considered light, he didn't feel much pain from them, as if they nothing at all. After certifying that the flower-patterned spider was truly dead, Kai Yang went to extract the leg that had pierced into his arm. When he pulled it out, a gush of warm blood followed. TL, surprise face, you just casually pulled something that was stabbed into your arm? Oh, it's stuck. Let's pull it out. Without even pausing to inspect his injuries, Kai Yang tore apart the spider web that was binding him and rushed to the little boy's side. Gently cradling his body, he brought him out of the cave. The little boy's father had managed to finally escape from his web cocoon, and just as he was preparing to run further into the cave, he saw a blood-drenched Kai Yang carry out his son. He quickly inquired, "What happened to him?" "He has lost too much blood and has also been poisoned." Kai Yang replied. After reaching the cave's entrance, Kai Yang placed the little boy onto the ground and raced towards his fallen bag. Taking out some of the herbs inside, he began chewing on them. Without hesitation, he called over the hunter, "Chew on these herbs to soften them, then feed them to him." The hunter was already scared out of his wits, so when he heard Kai Yang's orders, he didn't hesitate. Swiftly, he placed the herbs into his mouth and began to chew them diligently. In that moment, Kai Yang's mind was all too clear. His understanding of each herb's medicinal properties began to appear in his mind within his mind. Which herbs could detoxify? Which herbs could help with healing? Which herbs could help staunch blood flow? The knowledge flowing through his mind was comparable to that of a veteran pharmacist. After a short period of time, Kai Yang took out the herbs he had been chewing on and smeared them over the little boy's arm. The hunter followed his actions and began to feed the chewed-up herbs to his son. Under the nervous gazes of the two people, color gradually returned to the boy's pale face and his breathing steadied. The hunter could finally release the tension in his heart and fell on his buttocks. Crying out loudly, he said, "Fortunately, nothing happened. Fortunately, nothing happened." Kai Yang poured cold water on his newfound hope. "Not yet. My herbs are only low-leveled ones and can only alleviate his symptoms. You have to leave the mountain and find a doctor, otherwise I'm afraid that the poison will become incurable." The hunter could only listen to Kai Yang's advice. Immediately, he said, "Then I shall go take him to find a doctor now." "There's no hurry," said Kai Yang as he held out his hand to stop him. "Allow your son to stabilize first, then move him." "Oh, what the Savior says is correct." With such a great catastrophe befalling on the hunter, he had long since lost his nerve. So whatever Kai Yang said, he would follow. After replying, he remembered that his Savior was also injured. His injuries were not light. So he worriedly asked, "Savior, do you not want to also treat your own wounds?" Kai Yang replied, "Not need. But you have shed such a large amount of blood. How is that all right?" The hunter looked at him in shock. "I don't know." Standing up, Kai Yang jumped up and down vivaciously. "Even I don't know, but I feel great." He not only felt great, but also excited. Kai Yang suspected all this was somehow related to his golden skeleton, but how could he explain it to his simple hunter? As he thought back to the recent fight, Kai Yang's blood began to boil once again. That was the very first time he had ever been in a life or death situation. But he had not experienced even the slightest amount of fear. Instead, he had only felt enjoyment at the feeling of blood splattering all around him, like it was the most common occurrence. TL, the birth of an Azura/bloodthirsty demon/demon king? That's right, please wait a bit. I will return soon. As he picked up his bag, Kai Yang once again rushed into the cave. The hunter thought he had gone to sort out the demonic beast's corpse, but that was not it. Although the flower-patterned spider was a demonic beast, its corpse didn't hold any value. It was too low-leveled. Kai Yang's goal was to pick herbs growing inside the cave. Before he had begun his battle with the flower-patterned spider, he had discovered a large amount of purple-colored flowers. Previously, he didn't have the time to examine them, but now that he thought back to them, his spirits couldn't help but rise. If he didn't see incorrectly, those purple-colored flowers were actually the 3-leaved chaos spirit flowers that he desperately needed. TL, here comes a Xinxia luck. 3-leaved chaos spirit flowers grew in dark and damp places with a lot of corpses, making this cave an ideal environment for them to grow in. With his heart full of anticipation as he entered the cave, Kai Yang nearly laughed. Such was his joy. Helping others will really reward you well. It seemed that this saying was true. If he had not come to rescue the father and son pair, then he would never have found the herbs that he was looking for. The vast expanse of purple flowers in front of him truly were the 3-leaved chaos spirit flowers. Plus, there appeared to be a vast quantity of them. A quick count showed there were at least 30 to 40 of these flowers. These small purple flowers, all bunched together, would make anyone who saw them feel delighted. Without further ado, Kai Yang hurriedly took out his shovel and started to harvest these herbs. While he busied himself, Kai Yang's heart was more than content. Just as he was preparing to leave the cave, Kai Yang discovered a red, mushroom-like plant in the corner of the cave. His curiosity piqued. Kai Yang walked towards it to carefully examine it. This thing was about the size of a bowl, dark red, and was like a mushroom or fungus. Kai Yang didn't recognize this thing, for it was not mentioned in the little book that Treasurer Meng had given him. Could it be a priceless treasure? Rolling up his sleeves, Kai Yang went to pick the mushroom-like plant. As for the matter of its identity, he could work it later. It wouldn't take much space up anyway. By the time Kai Yang exited the cave, his bag was filled to the brim. "Let's go. I will descend the mountain with you," Kai Yang told the hunter, treating him like an equal. "Many thanks to the Savior." The hunter was moved to tears, for he knew that Kai Yang was worried they would encounter more danger on the journey out. That's why he was following them. "We just happen to be traveling the same path. No need for thanks," Kai Yang replied humbly, and the three of them quickly descended the mountain. By evening, they had arrived back at town, and in the dark, they searched for the doctor's home. Even after settling the little boy, Kai Yang wasn't in a rush to leave. After all, that night, the little boy had given him some of his rations, so he had to stay until the boy opened his eyes. Only after that would his heart be at peace. Inside, the hunter was paced around restlessly, worried about his boy. Before long, the doctor shooed him out, saying he was too noisy. Dr. Chu said, "It is fortunate we did some emergency treatment. Otherwise, my son would have truly lost his life. Savior, your mercy and kindness I will be forever unable to repay. Even if I worked hard my entire life, I will be unable." As soon as he finished speaking, the hunter knelt down in front of Kai Yang. Kai Yang did not help him up, but smiled and said, "Big brother Zhang, men only kneel before gold. With you kneeling, you have harmed our good relationship. You do not need to kneel in the future. I also ate some of your child's rations. If you're talking about owing, then I owe you too." After finishing his sentence, he went to help Hunter Zhang up. Hunter Zhang was moved to tears. "Savior, you truly are a good person." As they were speaking, the doctor walked outside and said to Hunter Zhang, "It is no longer dangerous, so you need not worry. But because he has lost a large amount of blood, he will be asleep for a while longer, but once he wakes up, he'll be fine." When they heard those words, Kai Yang and Hunter Zhang both let out sighs of relief. Once he relaxed, Kai Yang felt a wave of exhaustion flow through his body. Today had been far too exciting. He had also received many wounds and lost a lot of blood. Even with his previous energy, his body had still received damage. So when he relaxed himself, he fell asleep, sleeping until the sun rose. Early in the morning, Sky Tower. Many of the disciples woke up early with high spirits. Together they gathered in a certain region, waiting in anticipation. Thirsty eyes, craned necks, an unruly state of mind. These things were consistent throughout the crowd. Together, they surrounded the house like a housewife who had waited many years for her husband to return home, exemplifying that devotion and expectation. With the passing of time, the number of people who gathered gradually increased. It was like they were telepathically connected. Everybody turned their heads at the same time to look at one place. That place was the path that led to the residence of Kai Yang, a small little hut. Today was the day when they could once again challenge Kai Yang. This was equivalent to a free contribution point box. How could these disciples give up this golden opportunity? Some people pitted Kai Yang's predicament. For every 5 days, he was challenged and beaten to a pulp. This was really a bit too brutal. However, sympathy alone could not help Kai Yang. Even if they did not challenge him, many others would gladly take their place. In the end, he will still be beaten to a pulp, so they might as well do it themselves. At least they could take it easy on him. When they thought about it like that, they all came to try their luck. And if he chose me, I will definitely hit lightly, so he will not be injured too badly. Many people were making excuses like this in their hearts. Typically, Kai Yang was already awake and had begun to sweep the area by this time, but it was really strange today. Even after waiting quite a while, they still had not seen Kai Yang. Even when they tiptoed over to look around, they could not find him. What's with Kai Yang? Did he oversleep? How come he has yet to come out? I don't know. Thinking about it, has anyone seen him in these past few days? Could it be that he has already left Sky Tower? Impossible. It's not like you don't know about Kai Yang's stubbornness. Even if you killed him, he would not leave. If he really wanted to leave, he would have left a couple months ago, when he was made into a trial disciple. Why would he wait such a long time just to leave in the end anyway? Surprisingly, with all the discussion going on, no one knew that a few days prior, Kai Yang had asked for leave to enter the Black Wind Mountains and had yet to return. Though this was no surprise, for during normal days, Kai Yang did not interact much with others, and so naturally no one knew of his whereabouts. While this group were making a ruckus, a person had started to walk towards this crowd. His face was flawless like jade, and his body also like jade. He really was a handsome youth. But no one knew why at that moment. This youth's expression was very gloomy. As he walked, he was gnashing his teeth and cursing someone. Following behind this youth were a large number of Sky Tower disciples. Surrounding him, they made him the center of attention. While the youth was surrounded, he showed a very unpleasant face. He said in doubt, "Why is it? Why are there so many people here?" In response to his request, someone hurriedly came up to him and informed him in a lowered voice, "Master Su, today is the day when we can challenge Kai Yang. So many fellow disciples have gathered here today to collect some contribution points." The youth that was called Master Su furrowed his eyebrows before laughing heartily. "Looks like our fellow disciple Kai Yang is in an abyss of suffering." His words were full delight at Kai Yang's misfortune. And basically, he is challenged every 5 days. Not only that, he will not admit defeat unless he can no longer stand properly. The person who had spoken earlier further explained. Master Su laughed again. And this young master feels that the resentment in his heart has decreased greatly. But this is not enough. I must make him leave Sky Tower. For as long as he is not a Sky Tower disciple, I can do whatever I please with him, and no one can say a word. Master Su is right. That brat dared to tarnish your good name. He really cannot differentiate between a noble and a horse. He doesn't even bother to inquire as to Master Su's identity. He is too arrogant. This ass-kissing made Master Su feel much better, causing him to repeatedly nod his head. Master Su, whose reputation Kai Yang had tarnished, was exactly the same Su Mu he had met in Black Plum Village. It was the same Su Mu, along with the 2 Han men, upon whom Kai Yang had enforced justice. Because of this, Su Mu had flown into a rage, inquiring around Sky Tower on the identity of Jai Yang. In the end, he had found out about the ins and outs about Kai Yang in less than a day. After all, he did have his own network of connections and channels. But under the iron rule of the main gate, he could not easily move his hand and had waited until this day to bring a bunch of people over to cause trouble for Kai Yang. Unfortunately, he didn't expect that so many other people would also come for Kai Yang. This made Su Mu somewhat displeased. Waving his hand, he said, "Make them leave. Tell that today, Kai Yang will only be mine today." This statement made Kai Yang sound like some sort of young girl or like an available prostitute, ready to be brought. The person next to him promptly walked into the crowd, cupped his hands and said, "Fellow disciples, today's battle with Kai Yang. Master Su has already reserved it. So I ask my fellow disciples to please line up at the door and watch. I am sorry any inconvenience." This announcement took many by surprise. They all turned to Su Mu in confusion and asked, "Why should we?" Every time, Kai Yang would use his broom to choose the opponent. So for what reason should we allow you to fight him? Even if he did not choose, shouldn't it be first come, first served? After that was said, someone pulled at the speaker and whispered to them, "That is Su Mu. Do you know who Su Mu is?" Who? This person had just been accepted, so he really didn't know who Su Mu was. Idiot. There is an elder who is surnamed Su. There is also a core disciple within the top 10 surnamed Su. Why don't you say who he is? That person spoke. Although the one listening didn't nod his head in understanding, he still understood the meaning behind those words. He had been temporarily stunned by the information. When he heard that Su Mu had such powerful people backing him, how could he dare make another sound? Winning against Kai Yang will not even earn me many contribution points, so it's best not to offend him. Yes, yes, yes. The person replied while cold sweat dripped down his back. Su Mu was very satisfied with the reaction to his demand, but witnessing this made him snort softly in disdain. Although today's battle with Kai Yang had been secured by Su Mu, the crowd had yet to disperse. They didn't know what Kai Yang had done to offend Su Mu, so of course they wanted to stay behind and watch the show. After waiting for some time, Kai Yang still hadn't appeared. Sumu impatiently asked, "Where is he?" "I don't know. Usually he is already out sweeping the grounds by this time, so I don't know why he's yet to come out." "Master Su, should we check his hut?" After thinking for a bit, Sumu nodded and replied, "That's a good idea. He is just a small and insignificant sweeper, yet he dares to make this Master Su painstakingly wait for him. I will make him pay for this later." The location of Kai Yang's residence was no secret, so the people around Sumu swiftly lead the way. The ones who had stayed behind to watch the show also followed, creating a grand procession of disciples. A short while later, the procession of people had arrived at Kai Yang's small hut. When they saw the pitiful and wretched state of his hut, with holes littering the hut walls, they were not surprised. For no apparent reason, Sumu lifted his hand, pointed at the hut. "That brat lives here?" In response to Master Su's question, because Kai Yang is a trial disciple, he must provide for all his own clothing, food, housing, and training materials. The main gate will definitely not provide them for him. This hut was probably built by his own hands. Good, good, good. Sumu laughed happily. Thinking about how drenched Kai Yang would become on rainy days elevated his spirits. Sighing, Sumu controlled his smile and strode confidently, like a dragon or proud like tiger, forward. With a loud voice, taking care to clearly articulate each word he called out. "You, Kai Yang, get your arse out for this Master Su and prepare to receive a nice beating." That loud shout was powerful, like a storm, and yet unlike a storm, it was not detached, and uncaring, it was filled with utter hatred. The hatred and bloodthirsty desire made everyone present shiver in their shoes. This clearly displayed the level hatred between Kai Yang and Su Mu to the crowd. Evidently, it was not a small issue. Su Mu stood there, exuding a majestic presence. In this moment it appeared that not even the 8 winds could move him. After he finished shouting, he waited expectantly outside the door for Kai Yang to come running out, while pissing his pants and crying to beg for mercy. The more he thought about it, the more arrogant he became. But no matter how long he waited, there was not even a hint of movement within the hut. Sumu's face was now full of rage. Snarling, he called out again, "Kai Yang, be a smart one and get your arse out here. Otherwise we will come inside and drag you out." Yet there was still no reply. Sumu now felt there was something odd, for if Kai Yang was really inside, there should be at least sounds of him breathing. Could it be that he was not inside? Sumu signaled one of the people around him exaggeratedly. That person promptly sprang forward, forcefully kicked down the wooden door, and rushed into the small hut. Not long after they had entered, that person ran out again and reported to Sumu, "Master Su, there is no one inside. There is also a small accumulation of dust. Looks like this trash knew that a calamity was approaching, so had fled already." Fled? Sumu nearly vomited blood in anger. He had racked his brains, scheming for many days, all in preparation for this day. The day he would get to exact his revenge and make up for the shame he suffered at the hands of Kai Yang. He had even brought many disciples to come and watch the show. Yet that Kai Yang had unexpectedly fled? This was like a powerful punch had been let out, but landed on a piece of cotton. It made Sumu feel gloomy and depressed. Speaking about it, these past fews, we haven't seen even a hair of Kai Yang. A wise man will submit to the circumstances. Since Kai Yang had offended this Sumu, he probably knew that all hell would break loose, forcing him to leave the main gate. No wonder, even after waiting such a long time, he had yet to appear. Now that Kai Yang has left, we will no longer be able to obtain easy contribution points. The crowd muttered softly. None of their mutterings escaped Sumu's ears. Although he was pleased by the respect they were showing him, he hadn't been able to extract his revenge. Thus Sumu's heart was still unsatisfied. After thinking for a while, with a gloomy face, Sumu could only accept the fact he would not get to extract his revenge on Kai Yang today. In a fit of rage, he said, "That trash really got lucky. However, my anger will not dissipate. I will get something. Burn down this pitiful hut." This demand alarmed everybody present. Even the people Sumu had brought with him were stunned. One asked, "Master Su, Is it a good idea to start a fire inside the school? What are you afraid of? Sumu eyed him. Even if the sky falls down, I will be there to catch it. Furthermore, it isn't even important to the school. So what if it is destroyed? It wouldn't be much of a loss. Also, leaving this ragged hut standing will harm this younger master's eyes. Hearing him say that dispelled the concerns within their hearts. With the master Su as backing them, burning this hut is nothing. Before they lit the fire, someone went to look for dry grass to use as kindling. After a while, everything was prepared. Grinning, Su Mu lit a torch. Its flames distorted his face greatly, making him appear evil. Kaiyang, I warn you never to let me see your face in the future. Otherwise, I will not let you live or die, Sumu said while grinding his teeth. Just as he was preparing to throw the torch into the hut, a person to his side tapped his shoulder and whilst releasing a bloodthirsty aura inquired of him, "What is this for?" Sumu didn't even need to think before replying, "Burning a house." "Why are you burning my house?" That person's voice carried a hint of anger. "Your house." Sumu curled his lip ferociously and turned his head. As soon as he saw the speaker, he immediately jumped to the side like a frightened rabbit seeing a wolf. Then, with an exaggerated movement, he assumed a defensive posture. His face was filled with alarm, and the hairs on the back of his neck all rose. It was because the appearance of the person who had spoken was too frightening. Not only were his clothes all tattered, his hair was messed up with plants sticking out all over the place and dirty beyond compare. His body also displayed numerous bloody marks. His clothes were blood-stained, and a bulging bag was tied around his back. God only knew what was in there. A gentle breeze blew past, causing his tattered pants to flap, revealing a strong and sturdy leg covered in leg hair. The wind carried with it the stench from Kai Yang's several dirty body. Su Mu was unable to stomach that smell. That appearance, coupled with the blood and smell, made Su Mu want to vomit up his 3 meals. That posture, that manner, was strangely familiar. If he were to hold a broken bowl in one hand, then he would look exactly like a beggar. But why did he feel that this horrifying person looked familiar? Sumu looked more closely, becoming more and more confused. After he thought for a while, he cried out, "Kaiyang! If it's not Kaiyang, then who could it be?" Even though his body shape had changed and his face was covered in filth, how could Su Mu, who hated Kaiyang deep down his bones, not recognize him? If he could not recognize him, then who could? Kaiyang also recognized Su Mu. Grinning widely, he revealed a set of ivory white teeth. If it isn't fellow disciple Su who brazenly tried to frame others in Black Plum Village, the voice that said so was full of ridicule, turning Su Mu's white face a deep red. Stamping his foot, Su Mu retorted, "Kaiyang, you did not choose to walk the path to heaven, but chose to walk through hell's gates. You are destined to die today. You want to find issue with me?" His brow creasing, Kaiyang asked. "Nonsense," Su Mu cried proudly. "You thought I came to see you? If you have something to settle with me, come and find me. Why do you need to burn down my house?" Kaiyang questioned. Su Mu promptly threw the touch away and rushed to step on it, like he was stamping on Kaiyang directly. Venting on the torch, after a while, the torch was finally stamped out. This moment of pause allowed the people present to understand what was happening. They finally realized that Kaiyang had not run away from fear of Su Mu, but rather that he had only left to complete some business. But what business did he have to complete which had caused his appearance to become so appalling? Such bloodiness, isn't it a bit too much? Also, the tears in his clothes were obviously made by some sort of sharp weapon. Who did he go and fight with? And was it a life and death type of fight? Those bloody wounds naturally came from the fight with the flower pattern spider. Back then, he didn't have enough time to treat them, because he had to bring the little boy back to the village to see a doctor, and then he had collapsed from exhaustion and immediately fallen asleep once he knew the child was safe. Kaiyang had slept until the next morning without waking. And after he saw that the little boy was awake and well, Kaiyang had hurried back to the sect. When he drew near, he saw a horde of people surrounding his home. They all held torches and looked like they were going to burn down his home. But how could he allow this? Naturally, he would go and ask why they were doing this. but he didn't expect it would be Su Mu who came to look for trouble. Just as the owner of the house appeared, Su Mu, who had intended to burn it down, did not even feel the tiniest bit guilty. Instead, he felt excited and pointed towards Kai Yang. Kai Yang, don't you dare say that this young master did not give you a chance. So if only you will. Wait a moment. Kai Yang lifted his hand to stop him, and then leisurely entered his hut. Hey! With his words stopped halfway, Su Mu felt like he ate a fly, the ones that like to appear before dung piles. He felt extremely uncomfortable. Master Su, this person doesn't give one face at all. Someone cried out seeking justice for Su Mu. Sneering, Su Mu said, Later, help me beat him ruthlessly, for I heard that this brat never surrenders. So no need to be soft with your strikes. Today, I must teach him the consequences for offending this young master. Yes. When he entered his hut, Kai Yang took off the bag on his back. Inside this bag were herbs, his precious harvest from the 3 days he spent on the mountain. If he didn't secure their safety first, his heart wouldn't be at rest. When he put the bag safely away, Kai Yang exited his hut and said to Su Mu with a serious face, What was it that you wanted to tell me? Su Mu looked at him, his face a picture of abhorrence, his face full of bitterness, like he was going to spit out a mouthful of blood. Previously, before he could say his perfectly rehearsed lines, he had been interrupted by Kai Yang. But now that Kai Yang had asked him what he wanted to say, he couldn't wait and yelled out, Kai Yang, don't you dare say that his young master did not give you a chance. So as long as you're willing to kneel down and kowtow for me in front of all the fellow disciples present and call me your grandfather, I will spare your life. Or else, humph, humph, humph. The message was very clear, explicitly implying the threat unsaid. When he finished, Su Mu's face was filled with his desire for revenge. It really showed how he felt about Kai Yang. Slowly, Kai Yang nodded his head. Grievingly, he looked at Su Mu. What? Su Mu was unsure, for Kai Yang's face was calm and composed. This made him somewhat restless, for he had been played around with by him before in Black Plum Village. He was still a bit traumatized from the experience. Unfilial. Kai Yang sighed. The crowd was stunned. Su Mu was stunned. They were all thinking, how is this unfilial? What do you mean? Su Mu viciously asked. Isn't clear? Let me teach you. With a face of good intent, Kai Yang earnestly said, Let me ask you, do you have elders in Sky Tower? Looks like you really do have eyes. This made Su Mu's tail rise up into the heavens. Kai Yang smiled, for it was just like he guessed. Su Mu had someone to back him up. Otherwise, how would he dare to act so brazenly as to burn his house? Your elder must have no small amount of power within a main gate, right? Kai Yang asked again. He's an elder. Su Mu snorted out. I also have an older sister who is a core disciple. As long as she wishes for it, a single finger will be able to kill you. Kai Yang understood. He had a general understanding about the ins and outs of Su Mu's character. Patting his back, he said, That's right, so unfilial. What is right or wrong? Su Mu was furious. He was pulled around in circles by Kai Yang, and now his mind was a mess. And he still didn't know what he meant. Such an easy affair, and yet you still don't understand. How has your mind developed? His brow creasing, Kai Yang looked at Su Mu pitifully and patiently explained, With your older sister's position, then she would be my senior. If I were to really call you that, then how would your older sister call you? Then what would that elder call you? Unfilial. How unfilial? If I were that elder, how would you lock you up in the destitute dragon stream, so that in this life, you can't even dream about leaving it? Su Mu's entire body shook and his face paled. Destitute Dragon Stream is a region in Sky Tower that was the most frightening place in the entire school. In the hundreds of years since the school's founding, any disciple that was found to have broken rules or committed heinous crimes was thrown into that region and never seen again. As long as you were thrown in Destitute Dragon Stream, you were a dead man. Destitute Dragon Stream. These 3 words were well known in the surrounding 1,000 of miles. Its infamy was spread far and wide. Su Mu wasn't afraid of Kai Yang. However, those 3 words struck fear into his very soul. One of the people that Su Mu brought with him sensed something was off with Su Mu and hurriedly said, Master Su, this brat's mouth is very sharp. making him this confident. The reason why we came today was to help you vent your anger. And, regaining his senses, Su Mu shouted indignantly to hide his embarrassment. Kaiyang, don't talk about nonsense. If you will not kneel down and beg for forgiveness, then this young master will make you wish that you were never born in this life. His eyes glinting coldly, Kaiyang held up his fists. Disciple Su, why don't you come and exchange some blows with me? Su Mu replied in contempt. I would like to. Unfortunately, you don't live up to expectations. You're not qualified. This master is at the tempered body 9th stage. Hearing this, Kaiyang understood. The main gate rules state that if you want to challenge other disciples, the level difference must not exceed more than 3 levels. Su Mu really couldn't duel Kaiyang. Their level difference was far too large. This was also the reason why Su Mu had brought people over with him. They weren't just here to watch the show. With a face full of loathing, a cold smile, Su Mu tilted his head towards Kaiyang. Everybody, this young disciple has reached the tempered body 3rd stage. So which brother here is willingly to fight him? Tempered body 3rd stage, what a high stage. Everybody roared in laughter, for none of them had entered earlier than Kaiyang. Yet which one of them was not higher than him? Allow me to master Su, for my cultivation is within the limit. Though I'm only at the tempered body 5th stage, it should be enough to play satisfied disciple Kaiyang. A disciple said while walking through the crowd and looking disdainfully at Kaiyang. Kaiyang looked back at him laughing. Their information was already long outdated. If it were 5 days earlier, he really would be at the tempered body 3rd stage, but it is now longer the same story. But of course, these types of things Kaiyang wouldn't publicize. To advance 2 stages in 5 days, this speed was far too strange. Such a monstrous thing would only attract unwanted attention. A person who had come with Su Mu said, Young disciple, I am called Zhao Hu. You must remember who it was that beat you today. I have remembered it. Kaiyang replied seriously. Looks like that Zhou, who was intentionally trying to give Su Mu face, thought Kaiyang. Walking to face Kaiyang, he exaggeratedly waved his fingers. Young disciple, in order to not allow you to say, I didn't give you face, I will allow you 3 moves. As long as you can make me take 1 step, it will be your victory. If not, please don't think of this disciple's strikes as ruthless. This act of provocation contained the red fruit of contempt. To Su Mu, who was watching this, his heartbeat quickened in anticipation. This child Zhao Hu, he really knew how to thoroughly humiliate others. His choice of words wasn't bad. Although the difference between the tempered body 3rd stage and the tempered body 5th stage consisted of only 2 stages, there was a large gap between each stage. Between those 2 stages, there was a gap as large as a river separating them. And the strength that could be released when comparing the 2 were on completely different levels, like heaven and earth for these low-level practitioners. Oh, by the way, atmospheric sense, atmospheric energy, didn't make sense anymore, so we changed it. Besides, currently Kaiyang was in a very sorry state. With one look you could see that he had experienced some sort of tribulation. How much strength did he have remaining to fight? Additionally, he was very skinny and malnourished to begin with, easily allowing others to look down upon him. Practically everybody present believed that Kaiyang would be unable to escape the calamity today. Even Xia Ningchang, who was situated in a nearby tree, felt the same way. Xia Ningchang, who had become a Dark Hall disciple, had come once again to record the outcome of Kaiyang's battle. How is this allowed? I cannot allow my fellow disciple to be disadvantaged. Kaiyang asked, hesitating slightly. There is nothing to worry about, insisted Zhou Hu. Since I became a disciple, allowing you these 3 moves is something I should do. Haha. Okay then, Kaiyang replied, looking somewhat reluctant. Since Zhou disciple said so, then this senior will not be impolite. Bring it on. Zhou Hu bellowed loudly, while he steadied himself and planted his 2 feet firmly onto the ground. His body's muscles bulged, and his blue veins popped out all over his body. On the other side, Kaiyang walked forward step by step, his thin arms and legs tensed. Zhou Hu sneered internally and thought, just with your weak physique, Merely one breath from me, and I'll be able to blow you away. So what strength could you possibly reveal? Leisurely strolling forwards, Kai Yong walked up to Zhou Hu. He balled up his fist, slowly waved it in front of him. Smiling, he cautioned, "Zhou disciple, I senior will now really hit you. Come then." Just as those words came out, Kai Yang's fist had already been released, striking right into Zhou Hu's abdomen. Bang! That sound rang out. However, none of the people present saw Kai Yang act. That fist which strangely hit Zhou Hu. As his face paled, Zhou Hu couldn't help but clutch his stomach and had to take a few steps backwards. Bang! The second fist had already arrived before he could recover. It landed on his abdomen once again. Zhou Hu bent over, clutching his stomach, as he felt his stomach acids rising up. "Pah!" Kai Yang kicked out and hit Zhou Hu's chin. He cried out once before falling to the ground, motionless. He won. A great silence ensued. It was so quiet that you could have even heard a pin drop. One by one, everyone looked at Kai Yang, the shock apparent on their faces. Su Mu's eyes were especially wide, so wide that they looked like they were about to fall out of their sockets. 2 punches, 1 kick was all it took to send Zhou Hu, who was at the tempered body 5th stage, flying away. Fu *K. Is this really the strength of someone who is at the tempered body 3rd stage? Although from the start of the battle to the end, Zhou Hu did not retaliate. This power was far too much. A person who weighed about 100 pounds was struck so hard he'd fly a few feet out. If he didn't exert some serious effort, how could this occur? Not to mention that speed was unparalleled. One moment Zhou Hu was smiling arrogantly, and the next he was unconscious. They could not believe the battle that had just occurred before their very eyes. Not to mention Xia Ning Chong, who was sitting in the tree and needed to record the battle. In her small book, it clearly stated that Kai Yang won the battle. In the past 2 years, he had been in 147 battles and had lost them all. Unexpectedly, he had changed this record today. He had also won the battle in a swift and efficient manner. Originally, Xiaoning Chong was gracefully standing on a branch, channeling her energy to balance herself. But due to the shock of his victory, she momentarily lost her concentration and fell off the branch, plummeting to the ground. A masked female could be seen crashing down from a 30-foot-high tree. As she fell but first down to the ground, you could hear her screaming, "Aya!" Thankfully, she had fast reflexes and an equally fast reaction speed. At the last moment, she channeled some energy into her body to cushion the fall. Otherwise, she would have come out with far more serious injuries. Though her buttocks still burned in pain, causing her muscles to tense, hot enough to make water steam. As she stood and enduring the pain, one could see her 2 beautiful legs shaking. Xiaoning Chong looked around nervously, but realized there was nobody present and released a sigh of relief. If this scene was seen by others, then she would have lost much face. Activating her internal energy, she dissipated the pain on her bottom. Her eyes glinted, for Xiaoning Change could not wrap her head around Kai Yang's strength. He was just gone for a few days, so how did his strength increase this much? Those people who had witnessed the scene naturally could not be compared to Xiaoning Chong. Their cultivation was far lower than hers, so they couldn't see the truth of the matter. In that moment when Kai Yang had struck out, Xiaoning Chong clearly felt the atmospheric energy within Kai Yang's channels had been aroused. This clearly demonstrated that he was at least at the tempered body 4th stage. Additionally, it even looked like his actual strength surpassed this stage. But wasn't he only at the tempered body 3rd stage a few days ago? That damn disciple. He unexpectedly hid his true strength, and not only did he give everyone a shock, he also made some fall out of trees. This was hateful to the extreme. Unconsciously, Xiaoning Chong had placed all the blame upon Kai Yang for her sore bottom. Kai Yang glanced over to the place where Xiaoning Chong was hidden. When she had fallen, Kai Yang managed to hear her short scream, but because the distance between them was too large, he hadn't been able to spot her. Since he didn't find anything abnormal, he didn't investigate further. He then wrinkled his eyebrows. As he looked down at his clenched fist, he felt somewhat unsatisfied. Of course, Kai Yang was unsatisfied, for it was his very first battle with another human since he had obtained the golden body. Due to the fact that he hadn't controlled his strength properly, Zhou Hu was sent flying away. Originally, he had only planned to send his opponent back a few steps, but it looked like his power was a bit greater than what he had imagined. At the scene, Su Mu was the first to recover. As he pointed his finger to Kai Yang, he yelled loudly, "You cheated!" Kai Yang turned around and calmly looked at Su Mu. "Su disciple, you can eat whatever you want to, but you cannot say words recklessly." "When did I cheat?" Su Mu was a loss for words. It was true, when did he cheat? Zhou Hu had intentionally stood there and declared that he would take 3 strikes. Unexpectedly, he was truly defeated in 3 moves. Under the numerous gazes of the crowd, how could he possibly cheat? How could he cheat? "Master Su, it seems that our information was not correct. This brat is not at the tempered body 3rd stage. I'm afraid that he has already ranked up, otherwise how could he possibly defeat Zhou Hu?" Someone who had keen eyes and a shrewd mind quickly realized, whispering in Su Mu's ear. "So it was like this." Su Mu nodded, his face darkening. Zhou Hu was too arrogant. If he had retaliated, how could he lose? In Su Mu's mind, he thought that the reason why Zhou Hu lost was because he had underestimated his opponent. For he believed no matter how much Kai Yang ranked up, he would have only gone up to the tempered body 4th stage. With that large gap in mind, if Zhou Hu had retaliated, then Kai Yang would have been the one to be utterly defeated. "Brother Kai Yang, you have done well to hide your strength," Su Mu said coldly and gloomily to Kai Yang. Today he had failed to extract his revenge, so the suffocating feeling within his heart was not gone. Kai Yang shrugged his shoulders. "Let us settle the score later. Next time, you will not be so lucky," Su Mu coldly declared to Kai Yang. Then with a wave of his hand, he started to lead the people back, while also motioning for some to carry the unconscious Zhou Hu. But before he left, he directed one final bitter glare at Kai Yang. This enmity has been sealed for now, though Kai Yang didn't mind. In any case, in the main gate, there was only the main gate's rules. So if you wanted to cause any trouble, you could only do it in the form of duels. Moreover, he still needed to spar with others. Otherwise, he wouldn't know the true extent of his growth. With that in mind, Kai Yang thought that the feud between Su Mu and himself was a blessing disguise. Today's battle was not exciting enough. Kai Yang was left feeling unsatisfied. With Su Mu gone, the entertainment gone, the crowd naturally dispersed, though many of them still replayed the recent miracle in their minds of that 2-year trial disciple Kai Yang. He had obtained his first victory. Although it was very fast, he had still won. Oh, by the way, atmospheric sense, atmospheric energy, didn't make sense anymore, so we changed it. Besides, currently Kai Yang was in a very sorry state. With one look you could see that he had experienced some sort of tribulation. How much strength did he have remaining to fight? Additionally, he was very skinny and malnourished to begin with, easily allowing others to look down upon him. Practically everybody present believed that Kai Yang would be unable to escape the calamity today. Even Xia Ningchang, who was situated in a nearby tree, felt the same way. Xia Ningchang, who had become a Dark Hall disciple, had come once again to record the outcome of Kai Yang's battle. How is this allowed? I cannot allow my fellow disciple to be disadvantaged. Kai Yang asked, hesitating slightly. There is nothing to worry about, insisted Zhou Hu. Since I became a disciple, allowing you these 3 moves is something I should do. Haha. Okay then, Kai Yang replied, looking somewhat reluctant. Since Zhou disciple said so, then this senior will not be impolite. Bring it on. Zhou Hu bellowed loudly, while he steadied himself and planted his 2 feet firmly onto the ground. His body's muscles bulged, and his blue veins popped out all over his body. On the other side, Kai Yang walked forward step by step, his thin arms and legs tensed. Zhou Hu sneered internally and thought, just with your weak physique, merely one breath from me, and I'll be able to blow you away. So what strength could you possibly reveal? Leisurely strolling forwards, Kai Yang walked up to Zhou Hu. He balled up his fist, slowly waved it in front of him. Smiling, he cautioned, Zhou disciple, I senior will now really hit you. Come then. Just as those words came out, Kai Yang's fist had already been released, striking right into Zhou Hu's abdomen. Bang! That sound rang out. However, none of the people present saw Kai Yang act. That fist which strangely hit Zhou Hu. As his face paled, Zhou Hu couldn't help but clutch his stomach and had to take a few steps backwards. Bang! The second fist had already arrived before he could recover. It landed on his abdomen once again. Zhou Hu bent over, clutching his stomach, as he felt his stomach acids rising up. "Pah!" Kai Yang kicked out and hit Zhou Hu's chin. He cried out once before falling to the ground, motionless. He won. A great silence ensued. It was so quiet that you could have even heard a pin drop. One by one, everyone looked at Kai Yang, the shock apparent on their faces. Su Mu's eyes were especially wide, so wide that they looked like they were about to fall out of their sockets. 2 punches, 1 kick was all it took to send Zhou Hu, who was at the tempered body 5th stage, flying away. Fu *K. Is this really the strength of someone who is at the tempered body 3rd stage? Although from the start of the battle to the end, Zhou Hu did not retaliate. This power was far too much. A person who weighed about 100 pounds was struck so hard he'd fly a few feet out. If he didn't exert some serious effort, how could this occur? Not to mention that speed was unparalleled. One moment Zhou Hu was smiling arrogantly, and the next he was unconscious. They could not believe the battle that had just occurred before their very eyes. Not to mention Xian Ning Chong, who was sitting in the tree and needed to record the battle. In her small book, it clearly stated that Kai Yang won the battle. In the past 2 years, he had been in 147 battles and had lost them all. Unexpectedly, he had changed this record today. He had also won the battle in a swift and efficient manner. Originally, Xiaoning Chong was gracefully standing on a branch, channeling her energy to balance herself. But due to the shock of his victory, she momentarily lost her concentration and fell off the branch, plummeting to the ground. A masked female could be seen crashing down from a 30-foot-high tree. As she fell but first down to the ground, you could hear her screaming, "Aya!" Thankfully, she had fast reflexes and an equally fast reaction speed. At the last moment, she channeled some energy into her body to cushion the fall. Otherwise, she would have come out with far more serious injuries. Though her buttocks still burned in pain, causing her muscles to tense, hot enough to make water steam. As she stood and enduring the pain, one could see her 2 beautiful legs shaking. Xiaoning Chong looked around nervously, but realized there was nobody present and released a sigh of relief. If this scene was seen by others, then she would have lost much face. Activating her internal energy, she dissipated the pain on her bottom. Her eyes glinted, for Xiaoning Change could not wrap her head around Kai Yang's strength. He was just gone for a few days, so how did his strength increase this much? Those people who had witnessed the scene naturally could not be compared to Xiaoning Chong. Their cultivation was far lower than hers, so they couldn't see the truth of the matter. In that moment when Kai Yang had struck out, Xiaoning Chong clearly felt the atmospheric energy within Kai Yang's channels had been aroused. This clearly demonstrated that he was at least at the tempered body 4th stage. Additionally, it even looked like his actual strength surpassed this stage. But wasn't he only at the tempered body 3rd stage a few days ago? That damn disciple. He unexpectedly hid his true strength, and not only did he give everyone a shock, he also made some fall out of trees. This was hateful to the extreme. Unconsciously, Xiaoning Chong had placed all the blame upon Kai Yang for her sore bottom. Kai Yang glanced over to the place where Xiaoning Chong was hidden. When she had fallen, Kai Yang managed to hear her short scream, but because the distance between them was too large, he hadn't been able to spot her. Since he didn't find anything abnormal, he didn't investigate further. He then wrinkled his eyebrows. As he looked down at his clenched fist, he felt somewhat unsatisfied. Of course, Kai Yang was unsatisfied, for it was his very first battle with another human since he had obtained the golden body. Due to the fact that he hadn't controlled his strength properly, Zhou Hu was sent flying away. Originally, he had only planned to send his opponent back a few steps, but it looked like his power was a bit greater than what he had imagined. Treasurer Ming went to count the number of herbs. There were 32 herbs, a total of 16 contribution points. Immediately, he went to record this into his account book. You were in Black Wind Mountains for an entire 3 days, yet you only found this much? Treasurer Ming causally asked. Being able to obtain this is considered good, Kai Yang said while carefully looking around. Kiki, it's not bad. Treasurer Ming couldn't bear to pour cold water on Kai Yang after all he knew of the difficulties he faced. Although this child's natural aptitude was not good, he was willing to work hard. Nowadays, these types of hardworking youngsters are a rare sight. It's such a shame his aptitude was so poor that it was a fatal downside, for it destined him to have no major achievements. As he was thinking about this, he saw how Kai Yang's eyes were darting around and couldn't help but ask curiously, "What are you looking at?" Mysteriously, Qiang leaned forward and said in a low voice, "Treasurer Ming, in this trip to the mountain, I seem to have found some incredible thing." Seeing Kai Yang's cautiousness, Treasurer Ming also felt that this thing was something uncommon. He also became more serious and said in a low voice, "What thing?" "I don't know. I have brought it back to let you see it. You are experienced and knowledgeable, so you should definitely be able to recognize it." As he said this, he went to touch his and took out another bag. Carefully, he placed it on the counter. Treasurer Ming looked up and saw Kai Yang's face held both anticipation and nervousness. He couldn't help but become cautious too. Softly and gently, he opened the bag, squinting his eyes at the contents inside. It was about the size of a bowl, dark red colored, shaped like a mushroom, like a fungus. It really looked unordinary, with a heaven and earthly type aura. Kiki, Treasurer Ming couldn't help but cough a couple of times. Nervously, Kai Yang looked at him and questioned him, "What thing is this?" Treasurer Ming looked at him queerly, and instead of replying, he asked, "Where did you find this?" "Inside a cave in the mountain. There's also a first-realm demonic beast guarding it. But instead of me being killed by it, it was killed by me, so I took it with me." Treasurer Ming's heart jumped out. "You met with a demonic beast? Didn't I tell you not to go past the safety boundary?" "I didn't go past the safety boundary. I didn't know why it was in the safe zone area around Black Wind Mountain either." Kai Yang replied in grievance. Treasurer Ming sighed. He had thought something like this must have happened. It was just he was afraid that with this child's strength, defeating a demonic beast, even one at the first realm, must have been a very arduous task. This pitiful one. At such a young age, he has already suffered so many untold hardships while in Black Wind Mountains for only 3 days. And this work had only earned him 16 contribution points. He even met with a first-realm demonic beast, an encounter in which he nearly lost his life. If he was to tell him that this is too wrong, too wrong. Anyway, this old man rarely does a good deed. Just think of it as karma. When Kai Yang saw Treasurer Ming's face changing, yet Treasurer Ming not replying, it made him somewhat anxious. Just as he was about to ask him again, Treasurer Ming picked up the teapot and drank from it. Afterwards, he squeezed out a smile and said, "You little brat, your luck isn't bad." As soon as he heard this, the worry in Kai Yang's heart immediately dissipated. He was worried that when he went to ask, this thing would end up being worthless. That would have been embarrassing. "Treasurer, what is this exactly? How many contribution points is it worth?" Rubbing his hands together in expectation, Kai Yang asked. "Oh, this thing is called a blood mushroom. It is a rare medicinal ingredient. It is an ordinary—" Before he finished what he was saying, he looked at Kai Yang's falling face and hurriedly went to correct himself. No. It's an Earth-grade lower-level herb. It's really Earth-grade lower-level." "That's right." Such a firm tone was used that Treasurer Ming nearly fooled himself into thinking that it was true. Earth-grade lower-level. Kai Yang was pleasantly surprised. "Treasurer Ming, are you sure you didn't see incorrectly?" Straightening his face, Treasurer Ming replied, "You must be joking. In this old man's life, he has inspected many women. Kiki inspected many herbs. This pair of experienced and knowledgeable eyes, how could they possibly be wrong? How many contribution points can it be exchanged for?" Kai Yang was only interested in this. "Let's make it 20. That's so little." Kai Yang was somewhat disappointed. Even though its ranks wasn't that high, He thought it was at least high enough to make it worth at least 20 to 40 contribution points. It's not too little, child. Treasurer thought to himself that he had given him too much already. He then found a good reason for this. Even though this blood mushroom that you found is an earth-grade lower-level herb, it is too small and its age isn't that high. So that's why it's only worth 20 contribution points. Oh, without refuting, he accepted. Then 20 points it is. Nodding his head, Treasurer Meng recorded down the transaction down in his account book again. This trip to the mountains had already satisfied his goal of obtaining the 3-leaf Chaos Spirit Flower and the dead Jedi tree grass. Apart from that, it had earned him 36 contribution points. If he added his already obtained points, then he has a total of 48 contribution points. Kai Yang momentarily felt himself become rich and powerful. Although this trip into the mountains earned him quite the contribution points from the herbs, it had delayed and wasted precious time to cultivate. He had also needed luck to find the herbs, and the whole trip had made him very tired. Kai Yang decided that other than as a last resort, he wouldn't do it again. How did it waste time to cultivate? He only needs to do it for 30 minutes in the morning, and he managed that just fine in the mountains. The reason why he was collecting contribution points was to aid him in his cultivation. Between these two things, contribution points and cultivation, Kai Yang still knew which was more important. He didn't lose sight due to greed. Now he has collected a decent amount of 3-leaf Chaos Spirit Flower. He had collected around 30-40 of them in the cave. However, the amount of dead Jedi tree grass he had managed to collect was very small. He only had around 5-6 of them. If he really wanted to cultivate with them, then he must exchange some points for them at the contribution hall. He was well prepared for this. With his plan in mind, Kai Yang said, "Treasurer Meng, please give me 10 dead Jedi tree grass herbs." Old Man Meng looked at Kai Yang and wondered why he needed these herbs. However, he didn't ask any questions. He only sat and stated, 10 ordinary grade lower-level herbs, 10 contribution points. Are you sure you want them? Scrunching up his eyebrows in suspicion, Kai Yang asked, "That's not right. Didn't you just say 2 herbs needed to be exchanged for 1 contribution point?" The buying price is the buying price, while the selling price is the selling price. They are not the same. Treasurer Meng's smile was especially wide. The demeanor of a businessman was coming out. Furious, Kai Yang pointed towards Treasurer Meng's nose. "You are completely trying to buy at a low price and earn a profit. To reap a profit, this is too shameless. Did you let a dog eat your conscience?" Waving his hand, Old Man Meng replied, "It is not I who wants to reap a profit, but these are the prices assigned by the main gate. This is unrelated to me. All the prices within the contribution hall are unaffiliated with me. This old man is only in charge of selling and buying. How else do you think the main gate is able to provide for all 3,000 of you disciples?" Kai Yang was stunned, for there was some sense in his words. After all, this was a business, without any type of profit by Sky Tower. How could all 3,000 disciples in the main gate survive? Even if their one were suspicious that it was for a profit, at the end of the day, no one was forcing you to buy them. No one was forcing you. Then, do you still want the dead Jedi tree grass herbs? Seeing Kai Yang's face full of pain caused Treasurer Meng's mood to soar. "I want them," declared Kai Yang, as he clenched his teeth together. Sooner or later he will need to use these herbs, and since he had decided not to go find them in the mountain, he can only buy them. Turning around, Treasurer Meng went to the back hall and soon returned with the dead Jedi tree grass. Kai Yang counted the number of herbs while Treasurer Meng recorded the transaction down. After eating such a big loss, Kai Yang turned around and immediately left the hall unhappy. "Please come again when you have time." Treasurer Meng called out warmly from behind. "Come often to be killed by you." Kai Yang finally knew where Meng's nickname came from. 3 steps, 2 steps, Kai Yang frantically rushed outside. On his way out, a figure rushing outside nearly crashed into him. These two people's reactions were fairly fast. Kai Yang stopped immediately, and so did the other person. A sweet and pleasant fragrance drifted over to Kai Yang. Lifting his head, Kai Yang saw a pair of clear moon-like eyes staring at him, but he couldn't see her face clearly. This was because this person had their face covered with a veil. This was a female. Although he couldn't see her face, judging from her skin's condition, she wasn't very old. She was probably his senior. Nodding his head and apologizing, Kai Yang then turned his body to the side, clearly signaling for her to enter first. The opposite party looked distracted and suddenly turned red. Seeing this made his own gaze become evasive. Seeing her flushed face, Kai Yang thought that this senior was quite shy. Swiftly, he averted his gaze as to avoid offending her. Xiaoning Chang was embarrassed to death. She didn't expect to bump into Kai Yang in front of the contribution hall. When she saw his face, she immediately thought of her and recalled his. Suddenly, her face became red and her temperature rose. Hastily, she rushed into the hall. She didn't even dare to lift her head up. Seeing this scene was somewhat laughable, for such shy females were quite rare. Although there are many female disciples in Sky Tower, they were martial practitioners and were therefore more open-minded than normal. For someone like her to become red just from looking at his face, it was no wonder she wore a veil. This senior was a little bit cute. It was just why was her body's fragrance vaguely familiar, like he'd already smelled it before? After she entered the contribution hall, Xiaoning Chang glanced back. When she saw that Kai Yang had already left, she let out a sigh of relief, for she still felt a little bit guilty due to the morning's incident. While her feelings were in a mess, she heard Treasurer Meng let out an AIO sigh from the counter. "What's the matter, Master?" Xiaoning Chang asked. "You were just pitying that child." Treasurer Meng sighed out sobbingly. "He's a good child, willing to endure hardships. He's hardy, has a good personality, his character's not bad." When Xiaoning Chang heard the way her master was praising Kai Yang, she immediately grew angry. In her heart, she thought that he had yet to learn of Kai Yang's actions this morning. Not only had he striped naked, he had also sullied this disciple's eyes and given this disciple of yours the fright of her life. On and on Treasurer Meng went, causing her to be more and more infuriated. Unable to bear it any longer, she slapped her hand onto the counter. "Pa!" The sound resounded like something had been broken. As he looked at her, his face contorted and he wailed out, "That was my Earth-grade lower-level blood mushroom worth 20 contribution points." This was a blood mushroom? Looking at the already powdered mushroom on the countertop, Xiaoning Chang asked herself whether or not her master's eyes were failing. "How is this a blood mushroom?" It's not. How could your master mistake it?" Treasurer Meng replied as he let out a soft breath. The powder on the countertop then floated outside, like an invisible hand had scooped it up and scattered in the wind. "Oh, that's right. Why did you come to find me today?" Fixing his face, Treasurer Meng showed a rare face of solemnity. "I broke through." His expression changing, he went to inspect Xiaoning Chang's cultivation. Soon after he nodded, Good. It seems like I didn't see incorrectly, for only people of your physique are suited to this cultivation method. Come, eat this pellet to help stabilize your cultivation." And, after she took the pellet, Xiaoning Chang hesitated slightly before asking, "How is your injury?" Laughing softly, Treasurer Meng answered, "You don't need to worry about your master. After so many years, there is not big hindrance." Brimming with anticipation and excitement, Kai Yang returned home to his small hut. Today, the 3-leaved Chaos Spirit Flower and the dead Jedi Tree Grass were all gathered and ready to be used. The amount of each was also not small, so it should last a while. Now, he had everything prepared. Kai Yang really wanted to verify whether or not that incense burner could truly aid him in his cultivation. The location of the wooden hut was in the most empty and desolate area of Sky Tower. Practically no one paid any attention to it. Since this was the case, Kai Yang didn't worry about having his secret exposed. Walking inside, he called out the black book and turned to page 3. Then he extracted the incense burner and placed it on the bedside. He then took out the 3-leaved Chaos Spirit Flower and the dead Jedi Tree Grass. Afterwards, he stuffed them into the burner and put the lid back on. All of a sudden, a faint scent, akin to a rare perfume, started to disperse in the room. Breathing in deeply, Kai Yang began to analyze the perfume. Although the smell was a bit unique, there was nothing special about it. However, from the holes of the incense burner, The perfume steadily poured out and entered Kai Yang's nostrils. It was like small snakes were purposely entering his body via his nose. Within his body, it was like there was something more. In his flesh and blood, in his meridians, and even in his bone marrow, a feeling of numbness spread. Kai Yang didn't dare tarry. Carrying the incense burner, he ran outside to begin his cultivation. Stepping out of his hut entrance into the light took him by surprise. For his foot felt like it was made of lead. It was far heavier than normal. In combination with this step, Kai Yang felt his strength rapidly decreasing. Taking another step, he began to feel dizzy and wanted to collapse. Perspiring madly, his muscles tensed. The recently cultivated atmospheric energy in his meridians bubbled about, and his bones cracked. Taking his third step out of his hut, his legs became soft, and he fell to the ground. As he fell, Kai Yang's hands let go of the incense burner, and it rolled far away. Hands on the floor, supporting his body, immovable like a mountain, he gasped for breath. His chest heaved up and down as he took several deep breaths. His body continued twitched uncontrollably. His tendons, organs, and bones expanded and contracted, causing the pain to intensify as time passed. Although Kai Yang wanted to howl in pain, he kept his mouth tightly shut. His current condition was one of excessive exhaustion, one he had experienced many times previously. Thus Kai Yang was quite familiar with it. But he had only walked 3 steps out of his hut. So how did he exhaust all his energy? Not only was his physical stamina gone, his mental strength was also exhausted. It was like he had not slept for many nights. Even his eyes had started to feel drowsy. At this point, his 3 energies were all exhausted to the limit, and he couldn't even move a single finger. By this time, the 3-leaf Chaos Spirit Flower and the Dead Jedi Tree Grass's side effects had started to take effect in Kai Yang's brain. The toxicity of these 2 herbs wasn't very strong. They were weak enough that normal people could resist them easily, but the prerequisite was that they were healthy. Given the hardships Kai Yang suffered daily combined with his current condition, Kai Yang had trouble withstanding them. He was afraid that inhaling the incense burner's perfume was the reason this type of situation had occurred. Though regardless of the toxicity of the 3-leaved Chaos Spirit Flower and the Dead Jedi Tree Grass, such strong side effects was something they were unable to produce. The mystery originated from the incense burner. It was able to amplify those 2 herbs' toxicity. Ever since he had obtained the golden body, every time he practiced, he never became tired or exhausted. And since he was never tired, Kai Yang was unable to reach his limits. Being unable to reach his limits, he was unable to improve, though it appeared this was no longer the case anymore. He only took 3 steps, yet all his strength had been consumed. But the effect of this incense burner was not as simple as enabling him to reach his limits at this stage, for in the future will there ever be any fear he wouldn't able to train to his limits again? Kai Yang always believed that a person's potential was unlimited, and the important thing was how one uncovered it. Although natural aptitude could help a person mature, one's own effort was crucial. So after all these years, even he knew his own talent was lacking, he diligently struggled and never gave up his drive to cultivate. Thinking this, Kai Yang's spirits were greatly lifted. Gradually, and with much effort, he used his hand to push his exhausted body up. His thighs strained so much that his veins popped out. Gritting his teeth, he slowly pulled himself up. Almost all of his physical strength had been drained. His consciousness had started to become fuzzy once again. Yet his heart refused to give in, giving him a ferocious burst of strength and energy. In his entire life, he had never been this adamant about anything. He was adamant he would beat this. Stand up, for the place you fall will also be the place from which you rise. If he stood up, he would have broken through his limits. He would have won. Time had never flowed as slowly as it did now. Both his feet had already been planted firmly on the ground, legs slightly bent. Fighting against the trembling, his desire to stand had not diminished in the slightest. He would do it even if it meant taking it as slow as possible. Finally, Kai Yang bellowed/roared out, for he had finally stood up straight. Staggering forward, he steadied himself and anchored his feet to the ground.